the king of Vijayanagaram named as book. The Vijayanagaram Empire has given him Shayana the patronage so that they can grow as a great scholars of that time, and their gurus were also so great. They are Shankaracharya. One of them was the Shankaracharya of Shrungeri, and the one is Bharati Tirtha, another one is Vidya Tirtha, and the third one is Sree Jagannath. And he has shown his most reverence, reverence to Bharati Tirtha, who was the Shankaracharya of Shrungeri. Labdham Akalayan Prabhavalahari Sri Bharati Tirthato Vidya Tirthamupa Swayan Buddhimaje Sri Kanthanga Vyag. And Shankaracharya was also the minister, subsequently became the minister, and subsequently became the prime minister of King Bukka from 1364 to 1378. And his successor and Bukka's successor was Harihara II, and he also became the prime minister of Harihara II, 1379 to 1387, up to his death. China departed this his mortal life 1387 AD. Sayana Madhava and their group, it was impossible, quite impossible to write such a vast commentary upon almost all the texts of Vedic literature. It was difficult for a single person, or it was very difficult for an individual. So it's a group of scholars. Sayana, his elder brother Madhava, and a group of scholars were engaged, perhaps engaged, to present this Vedic knowledge. And that is all the Samhitas, all the Brahmanas, all the Aranyakas, his literature, his commentary literature is available. And his elder brother took Sannyasa. Though his elder brother has a very vast contribution to the Vedic studies and Vedic literature, still he took Sannyasa and named as Vidyananya Muni, and therefore in most of the cases the name of Madhavacharya is avoided, and only it is attributed to Sayana that all the texts and all the commentaries upon the text were by Sayana. This is the reason, but Madhava has also a great contribution, and he became Shankaracharya of Shrungeri after their guru Bharati Tirtha. Sayana and their group wrote the commentary of all the Vedic texts, and it is known as, the name of the commentary is Vedanta Prakasha. And in his interpretation, he has adopted several authors and streams of knowledge. And why several authors and streams of knowledge? That is the main point of this discussion. And because the Vedas are the first literature and of this world, and almost very cryptic in nature. If nothing is directly told in this Vedic verses or Vedic mantras, because it is said in Niruktam, one of the Vedanga, Devataha Parokshapriyaha, because the deity's love or the deity's life to be addressed or to be eulogiized indirectly, not directly. It is maybe one reason, maybe, but everything is very symbolic way, in a very emphatic way. Therefore, we can find both the brothers together name we find in the colophon of all the commentaries as Sayana Madhava Krutam Bhashyam. Both of them had contribution, and most of the cases it is only attributed to Sayana. They have authoritative scholarship and Mimamsha philosophy, and to understand the Vedas, the background should be Mimamsha, and the advanced knowledge should be on Vedanta. And these both the philosophies, Mimamsha it is Purva Mimamsha, and Vedanta it is Uttar Mimamsha. Both the philosophies should be the two sides of one coin, and both the philosophies complete the Vedic knowledge. Without Mimamsha and without Vedanta, one cannot understand Veda. One is Purva Paksha and another is Uttar Paksha, and this is the style of Vedic study. And Mimamsha is Karma Kanda Paksha, and Vedanta is the Jnana Kanda Paksha, and both these sides complete. Both these sides makes the Vedic knowledge complete. And this is the main theme which Sayanacharya, for which the commentaries of Sayanacharya is respected and accepted widely, though so many commentaries are before him and after him. And science commentary is upon the texts Sanghita literature, Ruk Sanghita, Taittiriya Sanghita. Taittiriya Sanghita he has written Taittiriya Sanghita first and then Ruk Sanghita. Though Rugveda, the name of Rugveda is taken first in Vedic literature. It has a reason because it is written in the preface first because Sayanacharya has his own, each and every one of us have one Veda Shakha or Vedic Christian. It is related to our Gotras. Therefore, Shayana's Gotra, he is of a Taittiriya Shakha and Bodhayana Sutra, Bodhayana Gotra. Therefore, he has written his own Shakha first and then he went to write the commentary of Rigveda. And another reason is that when his Bhashya is ritualistic in nature, though it is ritualistic, it is very exhaustive. Not that he has only adopted ritualistic views. He has grammatical views, he has etymological views, and he has philosophical views also in his commentary. It is the reason that the application of the Veda, or the application part of the Veda is ritual, or the sacrificial rituals. As it is described, Vedahi yajnartham abhipravrittaha. Vedas are meant for the yajnas or sacrifices. It is said. It means it is the practical part of the Vedic studies. And Sayana has very elaborately described how a mantra or a version is Viniyoga. Viniyoga means application in a yajna, in a particular yajna. It is exhaustively expressed by the Sayana in his commentaries also. And this before knowing the form of a yajna, the form of the yajna is determined is established by Yajurveda. And Taittiriya Sakha is the recension of Krishna Yajurveda. Sayanacharya is a Krishna Yajurvedi Brahmin. Therefore, he has described his own Shakha, which determines his sacrificial rites. Therefore, he has written the Bhashya first in his commentary. Then Karma Sanghita, it's also related to Shukla Yajurveda, Shama Sanghita, Atharva Sanghita, Aitareya Brahmana related to Rigveda, Taittiriya Brahmana related to Krishna Yajurveda, Shatapatha Brahmana related to Shukla Yajurveda, Tandya Mahabrahmana, otherwise known as Panchavinsha Brahmana, Sama Vidhana Brahmana related to Shama Veda, Tandya Mahabrahmana also related to Shama Veda, and Arshaya Brahmana, Daivata Brahmana, Sangeeta Upanishad Brahmana, Vamsha related to Atharva Veda, then Aranyaka literature, Aitareya Aranyaka related to Rigveda, Sankhayana Aranyaka related to Rigveda, and Taittiriya Aranyaka related to Krishna Yajurveda. And this is the region, this is the whole literature. And after these commentaries, he has also some original works. It is the commentary work. He has written commentaries. Not only he, because Sayana and group has written commentary upon all these Vedic texts. And the original works of Sayanacharya is Subhashita Shudhanidhi, Prayasthita Shudhanidhi, Ayurveda Shudhanidhi, Alankara Shudhanidhi, Purushartha Shudhanidhi, Yajna Tantra Shudhanidhi, and Madhaviya Dhatu Vritti. In the name of his brother, he has written a grammatical text that is known as Madhaviya Dhatu Vritti. And how vast his contribution to Indian knowledge system and our Vedic heritage. It's a very significant and noteworthy work which opens our eyes how vast a person can contribute, what can be the contribution of a person to the society, to the knowledge society. And now we will go to our main point, that is what is the peculiarity, that what is the significance of this Bhashya. And it is in a debate for the Rigveda Bhashya means the introduction part of his commentary. The introduction part is each Veda he has given before his commentary he has given an introduction. How we go through the commentary. This is the main thing direction. He gives guidance how we read and how we get into that commentary to understand the meaning of the Veda. It is Rig Veda, and he has given the commentary as it is in a debate form. The debate form is almost adopted in all the Indian knowledge systems because it is a debate form when either a disciple asks and the teacher replies or the acharya replies, and the debate form of Mimamsa is adopted here. And the Mimamsa, it is Vishaya, then Samshaya, means first the subject matter. In a particular subject matter, one will raise the doubt, that is the Purvapaksha, and that is the controversial part, and the teacher or the learned or the speaker will describe the solution part, that is the authoritative part. This is, and then we can understand what is their Sangati, or what is the collaboration of Purva and Uttara Paksha. This is the way. And in this text also, Purva Paksha is established by someone. It is a controversial thing whether any Buddhas, those who do not accept Veda or Sabda Pramana in their philosophy, they are known as Nastika philosophy or Nastika Darshan. And those who are accepting Veda as a pramana or as a proof for their establishing their siddhantas, they are known as Astika Darshanas, and they are 6 in Indian philosophical system. And perhaps this Purvapaksha is raised by the Nastikas, those who are not accepting Veda as a pramana or a proof. Therefore, it may be and it may be a discussion or a dialogue or a debate, and Sayana is giving the siddhantas by defending the Purvapaksha. It is one supposition, and another was Kausa is a character is also imagined. Kausa is also a acharya, as an acharya. The Kausa is a character. Kausa is establishing or presenting the Purvapaksha, and Sayana is answering the negation. It is a long time gap. Kausa is an acharya of a long back, but Sayanacharya is answering in 14th century. Therefore, somehow it is not accepted by, widely. And another supposition is that Sayanacharya himself presenting the Purvapaksha and answering the Uttarapaksha or Siddhanta Paksha. He assumes that in modern time or in coming period, anyone or anybody may attack the Vedas or may doubt the knowledge of Veda in these points. Therefore, I must prepare a very good solution so that if anybody will doubt the authoritativeness of Vedic studies or of the Vedas, the answers are already ready with us. These are the 3 suggestions and supposed by the scholars. And it is in a debate form. The references from almost all the related texts are here. It is so important because this commentary it includes or accepts all the systems, all the sciences, all the systems related to the Vedic studies, and in-depth discussion about the definition of a proof of a mantra, Brahmana, and Brahmana part is the Brahmana texts are also divided in 2 parts. One part is Vidhi part, that is known as injunction, and another part is Arthavada part, that is collaborative statements or definition of corroborative statements. And a definition of a Trai, that is another definition of a Trai means Rup, Jaju and Shama. Then Anuvandha Chatushtaya means who has the qualification for Vedic study, and what is the aim or what is the purpose, why we will study the Vedas, and what is the Sambandha. Sambandha means what is the relation between the study and its result, and then Adhikari, Prayojanam, Vishayaha, Sambandha, all these things. And 6 Vedangas, without 6 Vedangas or the auxiliary texts, we cannot understand the Vedas properly. And all these things, and another thing is that he has established 14, there are 14 Chaturdasha Vidya, Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsha, Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsha, Vidyasthanani iti, I have quoted it in the last part of this talk. Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsha, Dharma Sastra, Visvitaha, Vedaha, Sthanani, Vidyanam, Dharmasya Chaturdasha. To understand Veda, one has some knowledge on these in the 13 streams of knowledge. Purana, he has the knowledge about Puranas, about Nyaya philosophy and Mimamsha philosophy, then Dharma Shastra, Angamisthitaha means the 6 Vedangas, one has 6 Vedangas are there. That is Siksha, Kalpa, Nirukta, Chanda, Vyakarana, Jyotisha. And the 4 Vedas, now the traditional scholars are doing what? They are doing either in one Vedic tradition, they are very much they are well versed. Completely they have grasped of that Vedic portion, and they are known as the Vedagnyas. That is to protect the text. There is no harm or there is nothing bad with it, but they are forgetting that this is not the complete knowledge of Veda. Complete knowledge of Veda assumes all these things, or all these things are presupposed before grasping the words only. And then here 14 subject matters are there in this preface only. 14 subject matters are there. Throughout the scriptures, the Rigveda is always read first. But while Shayana wrote the Bhashya of Rigveda first, here 11 references are presented by Acharya Shayana. And the second point is that establishment of the subject matter, the object Veda with definition. And I will discuss upon this point as an example how he is using the references from so many texts to describe only a single subject matter. And Veda with definition and proof, Lakshana Pramana Bhyam hi Vastu Siddhi. We can't prove anything with a definition and with proper proofs. Without that, we cannot establish an object, and it has a form or it has any relevancy. And therefore, he uses here 23 references. And then the third subject matter is proof of the mantras. Mantras are meaningful. Someone has raised doubt here. As so many words are there, Jarvari, Turkhari, Amyak, all these words are not understandable. It is presented by the Purva Paksha. But Sayana very strongly refuted this. Anybody has no knowledge about anything, he cannot say that it is meaningless. Purva Paksha has no meaning. He is directly depending. You have no knowledge about Vyakarana, about Nirukta, and you are telling that all these words are meaningless. And before studying the Vedas, one must have some knowledge in the 6 Vedangas. And Jarvari, he has also given the meanings of these words. Jarvari Nama Hantaro, it is that epithet of Aswini Kumara. It is in dual. It is in Dvachana. They are the dual deities. And Turkhari Nama Bharataro means those who are protecting us. They are the Turkhari. In this way, so many examples are given there, and 21 references are used by Acharya Shayana to describe that part. And that's also a very important part. Whether the mantras have meaning or whether the mantras have no meaning. And some mantras are so many things. There are Viparita Bodhaka mantra, Pratisiddhartha mantra. So many things are they have given in that point. And the fourth point he has described whether mantras are whether the mantras have pramana or not. Mantras have meaning or not, then mantras have pramana or not. Pramana means if we give one statement and if we quote a mantra, completeness of the Brahmana portion. And Brahmana portion has two parts. One is Vidhi part, that is the injunction part, and the Arthavada part, that is the corroborative meaning of the Vedas, and it is described in next 2 points. And the second point is whether the Veda is man-made or it has any eternal origin. Because we Indians, and it is the parampara or tradition of us that we accept Veda as the Apaurushaya. Means a person has not written it. It is not written at all. It is perceived by the rishis, and it is Sabda Brahma. And Sabda, if it is the word Brahma is associated with the Sabda, it is eternal, and it has no human origin, or anybody has not written like the Raghuvansam by Kalidasa, or Meghadutam by Kalidasa, or Mahabharata by Vyasa. This is a very important point also. And regarding the definition of a mantra and Brahmana, mantras has any definition, or Brahmana part has any definition or not, it has also described with 31 references. And the definition of a ruk, to which mantra portion we say ruk, and which mantra portion we will say jajus, and to which mantra portion we will say sama, and with 7 references it is described by Acharya Shayana. Then study of the Vedas. What is the process to study the Vedas? With only 5 references, he has described it, and the result of the study of the Veda is unseen always, as we are very religiously accepting it, or it has some logical or very rational answer to it, why we will study the Vedas. And in 12th part, he has the injunction of study of the Veda indicates that the grasping of the meaning has the importance. But that grasping of the meaning should not be only to mug up the letters only. The meaning with the letters, or with the meaning, we should grasp the Veda. And the last point, the praise of he is praising the knowledge regarding the meaning of the Vedas, and he is showing his disgrace about the ignorance. If one does not understand the meaning, one has not the understanding of the meaning. Only if who is mugging of the Vedas, he has not so very much good idea about those people. And very clearly he has stated everything in this preface only. And the 14th part, the 4 heads of the Vedas, Anubandha Chatushraya, it is described by 13 references, and the Vedangas are very distinctly described by Acharya Shayana in the last part with 66 references. Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Chandas, Jyotisha. Shiksha is the phonology or phonetics. Kalpa is the ritualistic study. Vyakarana is the grammatical study. Nirukta is the etymological study. Chandas is the meters, study of the meters, and Jyotisha, that is the astrology, and which has also 2 parts, Phalita and Ganita. One is application and another is the prediction. And lastly, he is also described the usefulness of Purana etc. That is the Chaturdasa Vidya in the 10 references. Likewise, he has used 398 references in his preface only to describe the way he is going to give the commentary upon the Rig Veda. This is his way, in which way he has given. That means he has a vast knowledge and a very deep and in-depth knowledge in all the shastras to explain Veda. Otherwise, we cannot imagine such a thing. And it is not only he has trained also a group of people, or a group of scholars, or a group of disciples to do all these things. And now we will come to see only one instance about this. One instance, that is the proof of the mantras. The Purva Paksha, or the controversial part, says that there is no such thing as Veda. What is Veda? Nothing is there. And they are very vague things, and without the definition and the proof, we cannot establish what is Veda. And you are always a failure in this case. And how you are a failure, the controversial part or Purvapaksh is describing. First, you have no definition, because we say Veda Aupurusheya. It is a well accepted definition of Veda. But the Purvapaksh says that how they are depending. Always the Purvapaksh is so powerful. What much powerful the Purvapaksh will be, the Siddhanta Paksha will be that much powerful, because the Siddhanta Paksha will defend the Purvapaksh. In this way, the Shastras are established in this land. And the Purvapaksh is telling that if you attempt to define Veda by saying that of the three kinds of evidence, the philosophies of Indian philosophies accept so many proofs: Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, and Sabda. And here, three Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Shabda is presented here. And you cannot describe Veda either by Pratyaksha, that is perception, neither by inference, that is the Anumana, neither by Sabda, by revealed scriptures. You cannot establish Veda with this thing as Veda Aupurusheya. Nobody has seen it is Aupurusheya. We cannot also imagine that or infer that Veda is Aupurusheya. And there is no such words in Shastras where it is written as Veda Aupurusheya. It is by Purvapakshas. And the definition, and if we give definition that it is Sabda Pramana, because we are telling Veda as the Sabda Pramana, that is the words are taken as the proofs. What is described in the Vedas, that is taken as Pramana or proof. And if we take this point as our Pramana, but difficulty is here. He is indicating that the difficulty will be that Manusmriti Kshetra, the Smriti literature will come under this, because we are also taking the Smriti literature as Pramana. Therefore, it will be Ati Dosha. Ati Dosha means which will target that exceeds our target and includes other texts in this definition. Therefore, it cannot be a befitting definition. And the second point is the Purvapaksh is expressing that if you propose to add the definition that, provided that it is not of human origin, it is also false, because it is also not true, because it is originated from the Parameshwara or Ishvara. And Ishvara has a form described in the scriptures, in the very Rigveda also, Sahasra Sirisha, Purushaha, Sahasrakshaha, Sahasrapat, Sabhumi, Vishwata Grutva, Atyatiska, Dashangalam. This is the Purusha first mantra of Purusha Shukta, 10th Mandala, 90 Shukta. And how you are telling that it is not originated from any Purusha or any person or any form? It is that form is described, and you are telling that he is the Parameshwara, he is the Brahma, he is not Brahma but Parameshwara. And Rigveda is originated, the Vedas are originated from the Parameshwara. Therefore, your definition is not at all befitting. And the third point is telling that the Siddhanta Paksha tries to tell him that Parameshwara is not a very has the body which we are getting. He is not the Purusha like us, or he is not the being like human beings. And he is some extraordinary form is imagined only. Therefore, it may be accepted. Therefore, this Purvapaksha again defending that it's not a corporative human body. He is again they are describing that Vedas are originated by living entities. It is the proofs are there in your texts only. As it is told in Aitreya Brahmana is related to Rigveda. Rigveda eva Agneya Ajayata, Yajurveda Vayoho, Shamaveda Aditya. Rigveda is originated from Agni, Veda. Veda means the collection of mantras and Brahmanas. Brahmana means the description part of the Vedas in prose form. That is the Brahmana texts. All the Brahmana texts are in prose form. And both the parts are known as Veda. And this is also not a very good definition, as no one has yet not able to discriminate what is a particular mantra part and what is its particular Brahmana part. Means this mantra has this portion of a Brahmana, that mantra has that portion of a Brahmana. Till today, nobody has described such things. Therefore, your definition, the second definition, is also a failure, and you cannot able to give a definition. Therefore, there is nothing like a Shastra like Veda. This is the view of the Purvapakshas. It is very much interesting as they are defending, they are presenting their views, and the Siddhanta Paksha defending. Very interesting study of all these things. And proof, it has a definition, it has no sanya or definition is you have. And you have also no proof. You exist. This is not. This cannot be proved. It cannot be proved by anybody, because we are not seeing anything existence. No existence of a Veda, because if you will give definition, if you will give your proof from your own text, it will be a phalashi of Atmashraya. Means to prove myself, I should not present. I should not tell myself. This is the Atmashraya dosha. Means that is to support myself. I should not tell. Another person will say, or somebody else will tell. I should not tell. That is will be the phalashi of Atmashraya. And he has given a very nice illustration that no man, however clever or however powerful, one cannot mount his own soldier. It is like if I will give my own proof, it will be Atmashraya dosha or mounting my own soldier. It is told by the Purvapakshas. And again, he has given that if we will take the proof from the Smriti, Smriti is following the Shruti. Shruti is Veda, and Smriti, the latter texts are there. And then it will be also a Atmashraya dosha, because if my own kids will tell about me, that will also a Atmashraya dosha or phalashi. Other people not related to me will say, likewise the texts not related to Veda will say or proof of what Veda is. This is their intention. And perception, pratyaksha, is inference. Inference means that is anumana, and the third, the sabda pramana, when they are defended, loka prasiddhi, that is notoriety, it will be accepted. What is Veda? Everybody will know with the word of Veda. Therefore, if we will take this as the proof that Vedas are existing, then the Purvapaksha is saying that no, it's also an error, because it is like the belief of Aka Neelam Nabha, means the sky is blue. Sky is, everyone we are saying that the sky is blue, but actually sky is not blue at all. Likewise, everybody knows Veda or knows Veda is like this phalashi, like Neelam Nabha, or that is the phalashi or belief of that is sky is blue. Therefore, it is clear that Veda is not capable of any definition or proof by the Purvapaksha. And the authoritative part, that is the most important, and I will going to finish it very soon, and it's not long also. The Purvapaksha is very, they have given point by point points to defend the not existing or accepting the Veda. Therefore, they are the Nastika Darshanas, maybe the Buddhas, I think here, and it is the Siddhanta Paksha, how they are presenting the Mimamsakas, they are part. In the first place, the definition of a Veda, according to which it is the mantras and Brahmanas, it's a faultless one. The first accepted definition of a Veda is mantra Brahmana Ravi Bhushan. This is the latter text, and this text by Apastamba Rishi, and he is giving the definition as Mantra Brahmanayo Veda Namadheya. Mantra means the mantra portion or Sanghita portion, and Brahmana means the Brahmana text, Aranyaka text, and the Upanishad text. All are coming under the Brahmana text or Brahmana Granthas. And then we shall make clear in what follows, in what sense we take the term not of human origin. Apurusheya Veda, this definition is also a faultless, it has no error at all, because you have assumed something wrongly and your perception was wrong. This is the clarification by the authoritative part. Uktantu Shabda Purvatvam. Most of the cases, Sayana has taken Jaimini Sutra as to prove to defend the Purvapaksha. Uktantu Shabda Purvatvam. Here the two means but, and the word but in the Sutra indicates that the view that Vedas are not written down to be rejected. The sound which goes to make up the Vedas existed before men like Katha, all this Katha Sangeeta, all these people are very later to the Veda mantras. These people are, they are the acharyas, they are the teachers, they are the pravachakas, they are pracharakas of Veda, and they have taken forward to the Shastra. Not that they have written Veda at all, never written. It is perceived only. Then another point he has given, Akhya Pravachana. Mention of men is made on account of their teaching only. The names like Katha, Kapishtal, etc. are referring to those teachers who handed down the traditional knowledge of the Vedas to the next generation. This is the point for which we are finding the names related to the different recension of the Vedas. Then, what about the term Bhavara? Then some terms are used as, we are knowing that there are pronouns. They have assumed that the Purvapakshas have assumed that there are pronouns, Bhavara, Prabrahmani, all these things. But these terms are not indicating any individual. Rather, they are Shruti Samanya Matram. They are the words only. First accept them as a word and see what is the meaning of those words. Bhavara means that is a natural sound of the air. The air, it's a onomatopoeic poetic word, and whose nature is Prabrahmana, means Prakarsha Bahanam, means going forward or flowing forward. That is the meaning of Bhavara Prabrahmani, and that is not any person or individual described in the Veda. This is the part described about the definition of Veda established by the Siddhanta Pakshis or established by the authoritative part. And the group part is Shruti, Smriti and Loka Prasiddhi. All the three evidences are true, because Shruti itself can be, it is not like the mortal objects or mortal beings who cannot be their own proof. Rather, it is an eternal, or it is a divine proof who can prove for himself, who can prove for itself, and who can prove other shastras also. And it may not be a jar or such inanimate object who has no power at all to illustrate themselves, but like the sun, like the moon, like the stars, who has powers to illuminate himself or illuminate itself and illuminate the world also. In the same way, Veda has that undimmed power to illustrate their own self and to illustrate the other things. This is the second point. He defended their point, the Purvapakshis points. And for the third one, and this is the last point, they who know old traditions speak thus the unblunted power of the Veda. Tradition says it is Savarabhasyam. Savarabhasyam is the commentary by Savaraswami upon the Mimamsa Sutras by Jaimini. And he is telling that Sodanahi Bhutam Bhavishyantam Sukham Vyavahitam Viprakrishtam iti evam Jatiyakam Aratham Shaknoti Avagamaytum. It is the text which can explain itself of its past, of its present, of its future, and which is remote to us. It can be known through the Vedas. It is the Bhasya by Sabaraswami, and Sai was the real scholar of Veda. He is a real Vedagya. He enumerates in the context of a praise of a knowledge and the meaning, who knows the meaning of the Vedas, and very, very disgraceful regarding the people who do not know the meaning of the Vedas. And for the meaning of the Vedas, he given Vedagnyas are only two in this world, two types. One, the old one and the modern one. The old one is those like the rishis, like Veda Vyasa, etc. And the modern Vedagnya is he who has Chaturdasha Vidya, who has knowledge about Chaturdasha Vidya. The Chaturdasha Vidya is already told by me, Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsa, etc. He also expresses his distress about the people, those who are who declare themselves as Vedagya, only knowing one section, only knowing some mantras or mugging of some mantras. He has a very much disgrace about it. His preface only can enable a person to understand the whole Rig Veda. It is the mirror of the Rig Veda. His preface is the mirror. Like before writing a thesis, our preface will say what if one will read the preface, one can understand what will be in the elaborating portion part. Likewise, his introduction part or his preface can also explain us what he is intending to tell in his. And the proper sense of the understanding of the preface, one cannot have the complete knowledge of the Vedas or the meaning of the Vedas. He has quoted almost all the texts related to Vedic literature. The Chaturdasha Vidya, almost all the Vidyas are taken as references in his Bhashya. And the Chaturdasha Vidya means the four Vedas, and Puranas are our history. Itihasa Purana means Ramayana and all the Ramayana Mahabharata epics and Puranas, and Nyaya, the logic, Mimamsa, the hermeneutics, Dharmashastra, the code of conduct, Vedantas are the six auxiliary sciences that are Siksha, phonetics, Kalpa, ritual, Vyakarana, grammar, Nirukta, etymology, Chandas, meter, and Jyotish, astrology, which are the major knowledge domains. And some people, some scholars in later stage, told that it is 18, including the Upavedas. And the Shastras are interrelated. We cannot study one Shastra exclusively. They are interrelated, and researchers have to find out the correlation for better understanding of any ancient text. Rightly, it is said by Bhartruhari in Vakyapadiyam, Prajya Vivekam Lamate Bhinnehi Adam Darshanehi Kiyadava Saktam Unnetum Swatarakam Anudhavata. If we follow only one stream or one logic, we cannot go so far. But our intellect will be sharpened, or our intellect will be widened to corroborate things, or collaborate things, or interrelate the things with with so many streams and so many analysis systems. The preface of the Veda Bhashya symbolizes the multidisciplinary approach for complete understanding of the text, or it is the model presented by Shayana in his commentary to Rig Veda. Also, he has accepted for all the Vedas, and this is the model for modern research, and this is an ideal one. We can follow into some extent to have a better understanding, to have a better interrelation, to understand the things, to explain the things, to have a proper idea of what the text really means, as they are very symbolic in their form. Thank you all, and my reverence and my indebtedness to Professor Ravi Sir and Professor Kapil Kapoor Sir and the chair of the session, Rajnish Mishra Sir, and to all of you who are very much enlightened in their own fields of study and research, and my gratefulness to Bhagat Phool Mahila Vishwavidyalaya. Thank you all. Vande Bharatam, Vande Sanskritam.
Dr. Paramba, thank you so much. Indeed, it was a highly researched...
Sir, I am not able to listen you.
Just... Ma'am, am I audible? Paramba ma'am?
Now you are. Yes, sir. Now you are audible.
Okay. So I was saying that thank you so much. It was a highly researched paper. The idea of Veda, I think you have put the entire idea in very, very correct perspective, that in a very, very scientific manner. Just a small correction, the session is being chaired by Dr. Javeid Iqbal Bhat from University of Kashmir. Rajnish sir को कल जाना पड़ा, so आपका सेशन जो है डॉक्टर जावेद इकबाल भट्ट जो कश्मीर यूनिवर्सिटी से है, उन्होंने वो चेयर कर रहे हैं.
Okay, sir. Sorry, because at first I am not able to listen your voice. Therefore, I could not. My thanks and my regards and my reverence to the chairperson from Kashmir University who is present here. Namaskar, sir.
बहुत अच्छा आपका होता है. इसमें क्वेश्चन मेरी तरफ से एड्रेस नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि इतना ज्ञान हमको उस विषय के लिए मुझे नहीं है, लेकिन आपको सुन के मन में इच्छा जरूर जागृत हुई है कि उसको डिटेल में और इस मीमांसा फॉर्म में इस तरह से उसको हमको पढ़ना पड़ेगा तो बहुत कुछ समझ में आएगा. आपका बहुत उच्चतम श्रेणी का ये टॉप था, उसके लिए बहुत बहुत आभार. और आप जुड़े हमारे साथ, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत आपका धन्यवाद. जावेद इकबाल भट्ट से हमने कमेंट्स आपको देंगे. Please keep sitting. अच्छी बात है. प्रोफेसर कपूर सर भी आ रहे हैं आपके सेशन में, वो भी आपसे 2 मिनट बात करेंगे.
आप लोगों को देख के अच्छा लग रहा है.
हमें बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. We are reminded of all the time that you were here.
Sir, very grateful to you that you have given me a chance to Yes. Yes, sir. Yes.
He's always speaking so highly of you. Ravi Bhushan ji.
जी sir.
You should come here once physically also and spend some time here.
But next time, definitely I will come. Pranam to all of you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Just a second. So maybe we can move that. So that way it was also very informative for my information also. But sir, she raised I think two which I mentioned here.
The whole tradition is an argumentative, disputational tradition.
Right.
Where there is a Purva Paksh.
And second, she referred to Astik and Nastik, and she said that Astik refers to accepting authority of the Vedas and Nastik refers to not accepting authority of Vedas. So is it that or is it accepting authority some
God?
God?
In this tradition, Astik and Nastik is accepting
Authority of the Vedas.
So Bauddha, Jaina, Charavakas, they are all Nastik. But they are Nastik in the other sense also. They don't have a category like God.
Right.
They don't have. There is no category like God. But then in Astik darshan also, like the Mimamsa and Vaisheshika, Sankhya, there is no God. So even in what we call theistic philosophies, God is, as an ontological category is not. Only in the yoga there is a Ishvara. But that Ishvara is, smriti-hina, no memory. So that Ishvara you see is not much used because you pray in the morning and he forgets in the evening what he wanted. The smriti-hina Ishvara. So out of the 6 Astik darshan, 3 have no God. So we cannot have the parameter of belief in God as a parameter for Astik Nastik. So the parameter is accepting the authority of the
Vedas. So except those 2 points, I thought was very detailed.
Very good observation.
And
In fact, it is necessary for the young people to understand the difference here in the philosophical systems.
Because sometimes it happens in gatherings that we feel that our question might be silly, which turns out to be sometimes a very crucial question. So, thank you to her and thank you to all of you for listening. So, just someone has an additional comment to make on this presentation. Alright, so we can go to the moderator for the concluding.
We have 3 other dignitaries between us. So I welcome them in this conference. Professor Kapil Kapoor sir, Professor Dhananjay Singh sir, and Professor Kurukshetra. Now I invite Professor Ravi sir to honor our chair.
Where are you going?
इंग्लिश विभाग से आप सबका यहाँ पर अभिनंदन करती हूँ और आज की सत्र की अध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर इप्शिता चंदा जी से मैं अनुरोध करती हूँ कि वो आगे आएं और अध्यक्षीय पद पर आए। इस सत्र के वक्तव्य प्रस्तुत करने के लिए हमारे प्रमुख वक्ता जी हैं प्रोफेसर जावेद इकबाल भट्ट जी। मैं उनसे भी अनुरोध करती हूँ कि वे आएँ और हमें सम्मानित करें। प्रोफेसर जावेद इकबाल भट्ट जी। इस मौजूदा सत्र की अध्यक्षा प्रोफेसर इप्शिता चंदा जी अपनी इंग्लिश एंड फॉरेन लैंग्वेज में कंपैरेटिव लिटरेचर पढ़ाया है और इससे पहले इन्होंने कोलकाता की जयदेव यूनिवर्सिटी में अपनी सेवाएं दी हैं। सन 2013-14 में वे जॉर्ज टाउन यूनिवर्सिटी में ICCR भारतीय संस्कृति की विजिटिंग प्रोफेसर भी रह चुकी हैं। सन 2008 और 9 में वे वर्जीनिया काउंसिल फॉर इंटरनेशनल एजुकेशन और वर्जीनिया कम्युनिटी कॉलेज सिस्टम में इंटरनेशनल फैकल्टी एक्सचेंज प्रोग्राम की भी सदस्य रह चुकी हैं। इंटरनेशनल कोऑपरेटिव लिटरेचर एसोसिएशन में भी इसी सदस्य के रूप में ये अपनी सेवाएं दे चुकी हैं। प्रोफेसर इप्शिता चंदा जी ने बड़े पैमाने पर लेखन कार्य में भी अपना जो जुड़ाव है वो महसूस किया है। इसलिए उन्होंने सन 2014 में सेफिंग द डिस्ग्रेस वुमेन राइटिंग इन बंगाली periodical 1865, 1947, 2003 Peking Freedom, Feminism and Popular Culture, 2017 Surfing the City, Single Women Migrates and Their Lives in Kolkata लिखी। अब मैं प्रोफेसर इप्शिता चंदा जी से अनुरोध करूंगी कि वे यहाँ आए और अपने अध्यक्षीय उद्बोधन से इस सत्र की शुरुआत करें। प्रोफेसर इप्शिता चंदा जी।
शुक्रिया, इसकी तो कोई जरूरत ही नहीं थी। वैसे मैं तो कल से ही हूँ तो नई कोई बात रह नहीं गई है, उसमें मैं आगे बात बढ़ेगी। और आगे बात बढ़ाने के लिए सर आपको इनका भी इंट्रोडक्शन आप ही करेंगी, राइट? हाँ, तो आइए।
भारत में जब नैसर्गिक सौंदर्य के लिए जिस जगह को जाना जाता है वह है काश्मीर, और उसी काश्मीर की खूबसूरत वादियों से अपना संदेश लेकर आ रहे हैं प्रोफेसर जावेद इकबाल भट्ट जी, जो इस स्तर के प्रमुख वक्ता भी हैं। प्रोफेसर जावेद इकबाल भट्ट जी एक राइटर, ट्रांसलेटर होने के साथ साथ कल्चरल क्रिटिक्स भी हैं। ये कश्मीर यूनिवर्सिटी में इंग्लिश डिपार्टमेंट में कार्यरत हैं। इन्होंने अपनी MA और MPhil JNU से की है, तो PhD USA की ओयो यूनिवर्सिटी से इन्होंने PhD प्राप्त की है। अब तक इन्होंने अपनी 7 किताबें जो हैं इनकी प्रकाशित हो चुकी हैं। प्रोफेसर इकबाल भट्ट जी लिटरेरी थ्योरी एंड क्रिटिसिज्म, इंडियन इंग्लिश राइटिंग, मॉडर्न ब्रिटिश पोइट्री का ये अध्यापन करते हैं। अब मैं प्रोफेसर इकबाल भट्ट जी से उनके वक्तव्य के लिए उन्हें आमंत्रित करूंगी। प्रोफेसर इकबाल भट्ट जी।
Professor MK Byrski, Dr. Ipshita Chanda, and some other friends whom I have recently known, and then others who are already here and whom I don't know yet, and hopefully I will come to know some of them soon, and then later also others. Students of the department, good morning to all of you. It's a very, first of all, I should thank my team. I just heard when listening to someone that was not my student. But I was there, sir does not remember it. Then I joined department, Center for English Studies in 2003. Then in 2005 I joined MPhil, and it was around that time, I think, yes, so 2 courses I took with sir, but it is not entirely sir's blame because his class used to be very popular class and many students in that class, especially Bharata's Natyashastra, that course I did with him. And then there was another course in which there were 3 students. It was an MPhil program because in MPhil we have only 12 students, so not 3 students were there. So just to put the records straight and also to honor teacher, who is also.
I was nowadays, you see, my this time now I'm 83. So my memory has become
Right.
I even recognize the face or the name, I can't put the two together.
Right. So, but I am on the still. My memory is still sharper, so I can
But I
pick
was
out.
if you allow me then, I think also introduce him. He is a very easy man. And he translated a wonderful portion stories about the migration of sections of Portuguese community to the Moon in the 90s, written by Shamla
Ratanlal Sham.
Ratanlal Swami. And he translated that into English. It has been published by Telephone.
Oxford University.
Oxford University. They translated that, and my renewed contact with him on this, I went for a lecture to JNU late, and he asked 2 questions. And they were so intensive questions and so intelligent questions that then I asked him to come and see me and talk. And I didn't remember that he was with me.
So again, thank you. This is a good opportunity. Bhagat University reminds me of Kashmir, except that the temperature is slightly warm. And the landscape is plain, and in Kashmir we have after every 3-4 miles we have a mountain or a hill. So that way it's a good opportunity to come here and speak on this subject, orality and textuality. Now before I proceed on this issue of orality and textuality, if you look at the first slide, if you can play with it. Yesterday also this issue came, and many speakers talked about oral literature. But I thought oral literature is like an oxymoron, because literature word has its own associations. Because if you go to etymology of the word literature, it comes from litera, which means letter. So letter cannot be disassociated from writing, and oral predates writing. So I thought this combination of oral and literature is oxymoronic, and it's like a contradiction. To kind of understand the basic concept is related to orality. Because when I also started reflecting on this topic of orality and literature, first of all, some conceptual questions come. Is a text, for example, Hawa Khatun, a very popular poet in Kashmir. Her text is in my hand. Is it an oral text or is it a literary text? I think Kapoor sir yesterday cleared some doubt on that when he said Mahabharata right now in your hand is an oral text. Although it may be in a textual form, in a book form, but how do we define this orality? I think oral texts is a good way to put oral literature than oral literature. here I am again myself getting used to saying oral literature, but literature, I believe, especially for students, is a contradiction in terms. Because the word literature, it comes from litera, L-E-T-E-R-A, which refers to letter. And letter and alphabet are connected. So we cannot have the two together. Now, oral text is perhaps the better way of putting it, because text, its etymology goes to weaving. It refers to weaving something, stitching something. So that, I guess, is perhaps a better way of talking about these, because we have our own biases. It is very difficult for us to conceive of that oral universe of communication, because we are inundated by chirographic or typographic or electronic communication, that it is almost impossible to transport ourselves into that universe of communication where people had no letters in front of them. Now, even now, for example, if I say the word oral, or if I say the word literature, there is an image that comes to my mind. What is the first image that comes to at least to my mind is the spelled out letters, oral and literature. So letters come initially to my mind. So we have our biases when we talk about this oral tradition, oral culture, oral texts. So these biases come because we are so submerged in our contemporary modes of thought and contemporary social structures or contemporary ways of thinking. Our forms of thought are such. So imagine going, for example, if you go to Western literature, so alphabet comes around 7th century, Greek. One reason why we have often heard this in English department is that Plato was willing to throw out points from the Republic. The classical reason given is that he was trying to corrupt the morals of youth. That is one reason that was given. There may be other reasons. But then there is a different reason that has also been put forward. That reason is that the time Plato put forward Republic, at that time writing had come into being. Alphabet had come. Now, alphabet here refers to these letters, Greek letters had already. So writing was now in vogue, written composition. And he thought that these poets are bringing these cliches, formulas of the past. This is outmoded and this is counterproductive. We need something now, a different mode of thought, a different way of writing. That is one theory put forward. Why Plato, which we often don't hear, because the thought in English departments is also kind of cast in iron. So one thing goes from one generation of teachers to next generation of teachers, and now I am in department for the last 16 years in English department. In fact, when I was in the US, even there, this line was carried forward. Plato wanted to throw poets out because of these reasons, which I had already heard the reasons. But I think this reason, that there was now a transition with Plato's Republic, there was a transition from oral tradition to written tradition. Because Greek alphabet can be traced exactly around that period of classical Greek antiquity, when Republic came into being the Republic. Because he thought these poets are bringing to us those cliches, formulas, standard settings, standard themes. We need to get rid of. We need something new. So, the distinction between alphabet and oral communication. Now, coming now to my own topic, which is Kashmiri poetic tradition, and what is their oral and what is their text. We generally trace Kashmiri poetic tradition in Kashmiri language. Many people have this confusion: is Kashmiri different language? Is it like Urdu? Many students classical texts. I will come to other texts also, other authors also from Kashmir. Nirmal Quran has a wider Indian imagination. But Raja Tarangi is more localized. It is more localized. Though they are not in Kashmiri, which is spoken in Laleshwari's time, Malgana's time, or in contemporary times. But I am saying that traces of that origin of Kashmiri language go way back. It has deeper roots. Now, contemporary Kashmiri has no doubt, there are Sanskrit words. I think every third or fourth word may have a Sanskrit root. But there is Persian also. So every fourth, fifth word may have a Persian. And then there is an admixture Turkish words. There are different Dardic words. But its nativity cannot be denied. You see, one reason that I can give, the format of an English sentence SVO. Kashmiri language has SVO format. I think one language in South which has this SVO. I hope you understand SVO, subject, verb, object. Kashmiri language has that subject, verb, object format. If you know some basic, or if you speak to some Kashmiri, you will get to know what I am saying. So just like I will go home, it is the same in Kashmiri. Subject comes first, verb comes next, and object comes next. Unlike, say, in Hindi and other languages. That is why I tell my students in classroom that you have an advantage, you can pick it up quickly compared to other students because the format is same. And then the masculine, feminine, every object is either masculine or it just happens. It comes to your mind, Noam Chomsky, that it is something internal. So every object is either masculine or it is feminine in that language. But the fountainheads of modern Kashmiri poetry, we trace it back to these two people, one female, one male, Laleshwari. Kashmiri Pandits call her Laleshwari, we call her, Muslims call her Laldet, but equally revered figure. And then Nundareshi, Muslims call him Nundareshi, and Kashmiri Pandits call him Shahzadan, the blissful. Now, why I brought these two people in the context? Remember, I have three things in mind that I am going to tell you about orality and textuality. Number one, that oral tradition is generally formulates. I will explain what that means. That is why I brought Plato, why he wanted to throw out poets, because they were formulae. The second is that this oral tradition is agonistic. Agonistic refers to some context, either a verbal combat, intellectual combat. So agonistic, because remember the word protagonist, it comes from agon. Agon means context. That without some kind of context, you generally don't have literature, especially Western literature, some context, some conflict. So going back to Homer's times and then onwards, Shakespeare, so some context is there. So oral tradition has that agonistic element. So if you have, even today, if you have a written text which contains those elements, we can say that yes, elements of oral tradition are there in this text. You see, first of all, we have to be really clear about what we mean by this oral. What are the yardsticks? What are some of the conditions that have to be met in order to be an oral text? The third one that I will talk about is the fusion that this oral tradition contains. Amalgamation, hybridity, or which Walter G. calls empathetic element, that association with community. Because present is more important in oral universe of communication than past. Why present? Because immediate references. You need direct, immediate references to things and to ideas. So I was translating this book by Abdulhad Azad, Kashmiri Zaban Shai. It's a very foundational Kashmiri literary text. And Azad, he died young, and he was, I think, in his 40s when he passed away. And this book was on his pillow in the hospital. He had some issue which today is resolved easily, but that time there was no cure. He passed away in his 40s. And the that book was on his pillow when he passed away, and there are many gaps in that text also. When Abdulhad Azad discusses Laleshwari and Mundareshi, he discusses these 2 points. He says that where from did they bring these lines? How come Laleshwari was talking in such good Kashmiri? There is a metrical language. How come she was talking like that? How come Mundareshi, when he talks to his mother, he seems to be a very learned person? Or when he talks to his son? Or when Laleshwari talks to her guru? How is it that they talk in such a learned fashion, in such a learned manner? And then he gives the answer, really quick, very kind of brushing away answer, that perhaps it was not them who composed these Lalawakya or shruts of English. Because Laleshwari's composition, they are called Lalawakya. Vak, yesterday we heard 7 meanings of that word also. So he reaches that quick conclusion that perhaps they are not written, they were not composed by them, but by some learned author. Now that brought me to that famous Homeric question. The famous Homeric question was whether what Homer has Iliad and Odyssey, were they written by him or were they written by someone else? You see, from 17th century until 19th century, most scholars disagreed. They said no, this is not Homer's. Especially this critique came from Hebrew writers because they thought it is nothing because Hebrew predates Old Testament. It is kind of, so they were kind of trying to display the originality of Homer, saying that no, this is not from Homer, someone else has done. So 17th, 18th, 19th, then it was only Millman who says no, this is from Homer. Now, why he says that? The thing is, before again this formula idea. This is Homer's because oral tradition dealt with formulas. So they or what set phrases. So there is an axiomatic, and this words and choice of words was contingent on metrical composition. So they had to adjust to metrical composition. So Homer had some prefabricated parts that he had to take in. Even today, our communication has residues of oral communication. When, for example, we want to sum up something, that summing up, proverbial or in some axiomatic form, metaphorical form, metaphor which Aristotle considered to be the hallmark of a genius, that generally is an oral residue, and we sum up something. So that Homer question gives answer to Azad's question whether these writings are from Laleshwari or Mundareshi. Because same doubt was also cast on Homer. But Homer had three formulas that he was trying to create in a new way. Because as Alexander Pope said, what a poet has to do, what oft was thought, but never so well expressed. So it was oft thought. This thought was already there. Now your challenge is how well you express that. So Homer then expressed those old formulas in a particular. For example, formula. What do I mean again? Formula. So there is a particular gathering, a council meeting. There was already a set of things that was said on that occasion. So he had to just adjust. This brings me also to T.S. Eliot's tradition and the individual talent. T.S. Eliot says that there is nothing strikingly original. What is done is a reordering of monuments, classical monuments. So you have some classical writers, classical thinkers. You are only reordering those monuments. The poet is only a catalyst who brings about that rearrangement of different ideas. So Homer had the same thing. So that denial of Homer's composition was rejected by this idea of the formula, that there was an oral tradition contains formulaic expression. It has formula. Why formulaic expression? Because things need to be repeated, otherwise they get lost. There need to be recurrent patterns of thought for carrying forward wisdom and also effective administration. It needs to be repeated. That is why, when I began to read Bharata Natya Shastra, I was sometimes feeling bored, which was often the immediate reaction of many students. Why? There was this copiousness in the text, redundancy. But we perhaps did not know the text belonged to oral tradition. In oral tradition, redundancy is common because things get repeated. Why repeated? They have to be memorized. There is a mnemonic property in oral tradition. So when you bring verbatim and oral tradition text into orality, it is often immediately boring because there is redundancy in the text. There is a copiousness in the text. There is this, and residue of that is in written writings also. When you find, for example, maybe exaggeration of some things. So we carry residues of those oral traditions in our written compositions. So Azad's question gets answered through that famous Homer question. So what was Azad's question? How come Nandit could write? So he was questioning this modern skeptical mind, saying that it is not possible. How come she could memorize these things? And how come when Nandrishi leaves home, he stays in a cave, and then his wife comes and tells him, please come out of cave, now come home, your children are waiting for him. They both talk in dialogue. And Azad would say, how is it possible they are talking like that? The answer comes from the famous Homer question, whether Homer is the real author of Iliad and Odyssey or someone else has done. The answer has been scientifically now proven that Homer is there. Why? Because Homer had a vast storehouse of previous knowledge. He only had in Alexander Pope's language what oft was thought but never so well expressed. He followed that practice and that is it. Now, what was Maleshwari's past? What was Nandrishi's past from which they were drawing them? So, in Greek civilization, there was a vast network of poets and storehouse of knowledge. What was in Kashmir? Now, that takes us to classical Sanskrit antiquity in Kashmir. We have, and that is what makes me feel perhaps Azad either consciously or he did not know, or maybe he did not want to acknowledge that classical Sanskrit antiquity that was available to these two people. And it is, if you come to grips with that, if you really understand that classical Sanskrit antiquity, you really feel that these two are perhaps not, it is not the beginning, it is perhaps the culmination of that classical Sanskrit tradition that was available to these two. It is like the apogee, perhaps the highest point that had been achieved at that point of time. So it was nothing so striking that why did they write like this? Why did they speak like this? Because, if you, there are so many these shlokas of Maleshwari, which I remember, which every typical Kashmiri remembers. For example, the Rishi at one point says, Shiv Shiv Kalpil Rozam Rozam Kulmusam. So the Lunar Rishi addressing the Rishi that this Shiva is illuminating from your face, then don't distinguish between Hindu and Muslim. So on the face of it, it looks a very unique construction which in modern brain perhaps cannot take. There are hundreds like that. I am quoting one which is on the tip of tongue of any education. So what was the tradition behind it? The tradition was, as was spoken yesterday also by Professor Rajnish Kumar Mishra. For example, you have Anand Vardhans, we have Abhinav Gupta, we have Mama, we have so many others who have contributed, and that was behind these people. So they did not come out of the blue, which perhaps if Azad had tried, he would have given a detailed elaboration why they were composing like it, because there were preset formulas that they had to just tinker around in a very unique way to produce something like that they produced at that time. So a huge tradition into which I did not go. Yesterday, Professor Rajnish Kumar Mishra, he talked in that about Kashmir Shaivism and original contribution to Indian thought. I will come back to that again when I talk about a third point in oral tradition of Kashmiri poetry, which is fusion by elimination. So this was the first one, where if you please move on to the next. So if you look at this shlok by London, Banbos Rayas Duty to Mary, yes, I Lalla wandered for a year after having walked my desiring self. One who does not control his desires will fall into a well. He offered himself as a issue. Now, if you look at the first four these lines that she had, that is what Raghunath Azad was questioning. That it is not possible that in 14th century somebody could have done like this. She could have written. But the philosophy behind it predates Lal Ted's time. So as a homeland of rishis, several classa rishi. For example, in Kashmir there is a saying, when someone tells someone else that you get a long life, you often can do that rumination art. Now, rumination, I did not know. I thought this was some great Muslim saint in the past. That is why people are saying that may God give you rumination. Then I asked one folklore scholar, he's a very old man in his 80s. I asked him, who is this rumination? So he said, rumination is in our mythology, and the rishi who lived in the past, Ramu Rishi, comes from Ramu Rishi. So Ramu Rishi had long life. That is why the popular saying that may God give you the life or the lifespan of Ramu Rishi. So ask any ordinary Kashmiri, perhaps he or she may not know where from does this come. I thought it came from Rishi, but then I was told it goes back to some Rishi in the past, Ramu Rishi, who had a long life, and that is why people address it as Ramu Rishi. So again, coming to this point of one-way thought and extension, that there was a pre-set of phrases, formulas, settings, standard settings that had to be tinkered with, and you had to now express it in a way that is more palatable, that sounds more appealing to the audience. And then you also amalgamate through that different skills. You see, Kashmiris are a very good point. Very often people don't have an idea of the topography. It likes straddle civilizations. So you have on the one side Central Asian influence. On the other side, we have the Hindu-fast classical Sanskrit integrated, top classical Sanskrit politicians have come from there. So it's clear that in the fourth Buddhist council was also had their Kanishka style. So this is the convergence point. So it offers a unique perspective on for a person who is known to his own past, who knows about, conscious about his roots. It provides him with that vantage point to look at different civilizations and the impact and the different strands that have come into giving a particular formation to thought and expression. Because look at food, Central Asian influence, look at literature, a lot of Sanskrit influence. So different strands have come into the making of the modern Kashmiri mind or foreign language. Thank you. So then let's take one issue. Now here is Mukherjee. Mukherjee had this, he is considered to be kind of the flag bearer who started this Rishi movement. Now again, question is sometimes raised, Sufi, Rishi, and so Rishiism can be traced back in antiquity in Kashmir, and Sufistic thought has an impression, a deeper impression of the scriptural Islamic impact. Now here he is talking to his mother when he leaves home and he stays in a cave for 13-14 years. And Nunda am kena dabai natai, nunda angchum jalan prono, nunda daptam kya boy kenai, nunda yum travel travel. What a beautiful. Now even today nunda born is the beautiful one in Kashmiri language. Nunda born. Somebody is like a nunda born. So a beautiful person, a beautiful human being. Oh, the beautiful one, I will not ask you to do any work. Come back home, people are taunting me, tell me how I made you cross. Why have you stopped coming to me? Now, by the way, this is my translation, that is why it sounds so unformulated. So, I have translated the second volume of Kashmiri Zuban and Shairi. The Cultural Academy had commissioned that, although they are yet to pay, but translation. That reminds me of Samuel Johnson. Yesterday somebody was asking this question that why did he write? I think Samuel Johnson had this classical answer why he said that no one ever but a blockhead wrote except for money. So if you are a blockhead, you did not write for money. So that is generally if you go away from the sophisticated refined answers, that is perhaps, although and translator job is even worse because unlike some other writings, you cannot give even one paragraph to someone else to translate. Because I tried that once. To one of my scholars, I gave him one paragraph to translate because I thought let him help me. So once he brought the translation back, it was not magic. Because the way I had translated, anybody could pick it. That someone else has done this part. So that was the time I stopped. So in those 5 lines, I then had to retranslate. So why this is unformulated? Because translation, as someone has said, is the reverse side of the carpet. So this is an example of that. But the point that runs through my first part is that oral tradition is formulae. That formulas have to be tinkered with to give a new thought. And that addresses Abdullah Azad's question, that addresses the famous Homeric question. Whether Homer was, yes he was. It was easy for him because there was previous to him a long tradition of poets, oral tradition. And he just had to readjust, reorient. He just had to reorder that thought in order to produce something strikingly original. So then Sheikh replies, Moish Bunay Gary John Yamai, about Khadai Mathaulani, Moish Kharjinai, but John Kamai, and Kisaf Saban. Mother, I will not come to your home. God has written the same in my destiny. Mother, I will not eat from your plate. My deep interior has become pure. Now, why
why there is a continuity with an older tradition here? Because this is not the standard, if I may dare say that, though I am not an expert in Islamic scholarship, whatever I have got from few texts here and there and what I have interiorized from the popular culture, which often may not be right. It's not a standard Islamic practice where you hide from society. It is enjoined upon a Muslim to live among people. Here you create your spirituality, you have to live, be with people, be in community. But here he was Nundarishi in a cave for 13-14 years. So this connecting him with the past, the Rishis that was prevalent. Even today, if you go to Kashmir, there are several mountains where there are these caves where these saints and Rishis have lived. So this Nundarishi had then 4 main disciples who went to different parts of Kashmir and then spread this Sufistic or Rishistic thought. So they are still those caves. In my neighborhood, there is this famous Zainuddin shrine on a mountain in a hill, where people go and official canonical Islam they consider it to be not good, but people go there on multiple days. So they had a previous tradition from which they were drawn. Next. So he would ask this question, how come ordinary conversation? For example, sometimes Nundarishi is talking to a Persian Sayyid, because a lot of Sayyids came in 14th century. So if Sayyids had Persian language and he had Kashmiri language, how come even a Sayyid was talking in Persian language? So that question is also raised by Abdullah Hadazat, or even ordinary conversation. How come ordinary conversation of people was so poetic? Where from did it come? Now again, he brings another question also side by side with this. Kashmiri language has been de-patronized. It is only recently that it has been put in syllabus. Otherwise, unfortunately, Urdu has been given patronage in 20th century. Before that was Persian. Kashmiri language, if it has survived, it is because of people, bakers, carpenters, peasants, butchers, or it has survived because of cobblers, because even a sophisticated doctor has to talk to a carpenter. And when he talks to a carpenter, he cannot talk to him in Urdu, he has to talk to him in Kashmiri. So it is through them that, and perhaps, if I am not wrong, this oral tradition also has also sustained, survived, because of the so-called low people, or people who belong to the lower hierarchy, because even today the trend, unfortunately in Kashmir, is that Urdu is getting very popularized, which is very unfortunate, because why it is? Because the elite class, the political class speaks in that language, and this language had been de-patronized. So that is another reason why Azad brings this question. If Persian was the official, how come these people were speaking in such a sophisticated poetical language in the 14th century? Because these people, both Laleshwari and Nundarishi, their time is late 14th, early 15th century. And that is considered the first period of Kashmiri poetical tradition. Next comes then Bhagat and other. Alright, next please. So there is a continued philosophical, socio-political, which is not given that due attention. I personally, when I did not know much about this particular past of my ancestors before I got into higher education and then looked at some texts and one got to know that there are deeper connections with our past. Next is emotion. Now next feature of orality that I will come to now is first of all the formulae, that what oral tradition is, what is the hallmark of oral tradition, what makes it then easy to compose. Oral methods of composition are determined by certain features which I have in the first one, dealt with in the first one. Features of oral agonistic. Now what is agonistic is, as I told you, that most of the Western literature, it is conditioned by this some kind of contest is there. Or we can sometimes, or conflict, a more sharper word perhaps than contest. Contest can be limited to verbal, intellectual combat or some challenge. But you have conflict that goes into violent domain also, as in Shakespeare's tragedies. But that essential feature of challenging, questioning, or this rebuttal of what you say is immediately rebutted by someone else. That is an essential feature of oral tradition. And that is how Kashmiri poetic tradition is replete with. For example, there was an argument over 4 questions. When Lamdad, she speaks to her guru, 4 questions they ask and then they try to answer. Argument over 4 questions. Which is the best light? Which is the best holy place? Who is the best friend? Which gives the best contentment to heart? Lala Arfa's husband had also joined this discussion. He said, Sirius Huna Prakash Huni, Dangi Huna Girat Kam, Boys Huna Bandav Huni, Rani Huna Sokkas. There is nothing equal to sun and light. There is no other sacred spot equal to Ganga. There is no greater friend and brother. No one gives more comfort than wife. This was Lal Dad's husband. I am referring to contest in terms of ideas here. So, as an example of the character of oral tradition. Her Guru says, Ashan Huna Prakash Kuri, Pathen Huna Sokka, Chandas Huna Bandav Kuri, Heni Huna Sokka. There is nothing equal to eyes and light. There is no other sacred spot than the knees. There is no greater friend than the pocket. Nothing gives more comfort than Kheni. Kheni is a kind of a, it is wrapped, a kind of a blanket that is wrapped around. So, then we come to his next. How Lalgad replies to these 4 questions. Meli Hunu Prakash Kuni, Payas Hunu Dirakka, Dayas Hunu Bandu Kuni, Boys Hunu Sakka. There is no light equal to that of knowledge or gnosis. There is no greater fear than the pursuit of truth. There is no greater friend than Paramatma, and there is no greater comfort in the fear of God. Now here again, you see, you find some traces of that Islamic thought also come, because an essential feature of a good Muslim is that taqwa. Taqwa is an Arabic word which means fear of God. So if you fear referring to, and by the way, some people have rightly said that if you read Old Testament, there is a very angry God out there. That you get, in fact, Salman Rushdie says that Quran can be divided into 3 parts. There is a juridical legal part, and then there is this moral advice part, and third part is this where you find this angry person out there telling you to do certain things. So you have this contest going on, and then a resolution also. Now you see there is oral tradition carrying advice also, and this had to be repeated because wisdom had to be carried forward. And what better way to carry forward wisdom through other than these catchy, musical, metrical, formulae lines. So I think the first thing that one has to perhaps really get to the bottom of this oral tradition is to imagine for a while that there are no written words around. There is no electronic communication around. And it will take a great effort to actually train your mind to find, to realize, if not find, what it means to live in that oral oral noetic universe. What does it mean to live? Yes, please next one. On another, now there is again context. Now this is a common feature of both Laleshwari, where Nundarishi questions a mullah or a priestly class, and here we have Laleshwari also arguing with a guru or some pandit. Laz khasi shvit nabrai, tanzan khari ahar, ikam mubdesh kori khavada, at season versus swat season ka ahar. He guards your modesty and protects you from cold. The poor one lives on grass and water. Stupid pandit who has instructed you to sacrifice a living sheep on a lifeless stone. Now, this is that contest that I am talking about, agonistic element in the oral tradition, where he is directly questioning some authority, and there may be a response also. In fact, at another point, she would then listen to her guru. Where there is a story about Lalita that she used to go bare body around. Whether that is true or false, but in popular folklore that is often said that she used to say. Now, in response to that, she has also written this vak wherein she says that Guru has told me that from without, now you go within. So these external apparatus, external garments, they are not so important for me. So while there is contest, then there are certainly some walks where you find there is a obedience to authority also. Next please. Now, Sarfas Zelzil Astas Khandas, Sehas Zelzil Kurmastam, Indaras Zelzil Varias Khandas, Lanis Zelzil Ashmastam. Remain a yard away from the snake and a couple of miles from the lion, for a year away from the religious person, but not for a wing from the destiny. So the same spirit as you find. So there are many Rishis, the shruks, we call them shruks. These are his whole life. So where he directly hits at this priestly class, that what they are telling people, you should not go by them. So there are dialogues with mother. That is why this question came to me about debate and dialogue, because I thought dialogue is a more appropriate word when you talk about this oral communication, or with regard to the previous presentation where she was talking about the practice as a debate. So dialogue with mother, then there is weaver, then there is Amir Hamdani, Gum Sadhu, Tavali Rena, and then sarcasm directed towards the mullahs in this contest element between. Maybe, if you dig deeper, why this contest? Because perhaps a transition was taking place from one civilizational bedrock to a new civilizational bedrock, although bedrock may not be the right word, because bedrock was already there. The bottom stratum was already there. The appendages newly they were being added to it. So it was perhaps the transition to the addition of those appendages, hence perhaps this intense contestation. Why intense? Because as a native speaker, I can feel the bite and the edge of these lines that are uttered by Nundarishi and Laleshwari. Next, please. So there are other, I will not touch in detail parataxis or parallelism, which are again features of oral tradition. For example, parallelism. I hope you all know parallelism. Easy come, easy go is an example of parallelism. Or for example, we always love those who admire us, but we only sometimes love those whom we admire. As an example of that parallelism. So those are also features. I will not go into that. Just an example to highlight that this also exists in the Kashmiri poetic tradition. Next, please. Now this is the third one. that I will talk about and with which I will also conclude is this fusion of different cultural strands in Kashmiri oral poetry tradition. Why fusion? Because see, perhaps it was an easier transition to a new civilizational aspect in Kashmir. Why? Because if you look at Kashmir Shaivism, how Vasugupta got those Shiv Sutras, if you look at the story, it almost looks like the story of Moses getting the 10 Commandments, those tablets. It's almost like that. They talk, there's a Shankar Pal, the rock of Shankar. The story goes, the rock of Shankar, and Vasugupta went there. And those Shiv Sutras were inscribed on the rock. And then this deep, some monotheistic content. So perhaps that made it perhaps easier to ride on to another bandwagon around 11th, 12th century. Perhaps that was the reason. And perhaps that is the reason there is this strong fusion element, fusion, amalgamation, hybrid character of this oral poetic tradition in Kashmir. And Chitraklekha Zuchi in her book she talks about fluidity of religious boundaries and a syncretic culture as a strong element in this poetic tradition, in this Kashmiri literary and non-literary tradition. Patrick Colum Hoggle has written a very famous essay on the first part of Midnight Children, and where he talks about the everyday border crossing that takes place. I think a very remarkable essay where he says that people have often discussed Midnight Children as a national allegory, but then and other ways also. But the first part of this Midnight Children is often ignored, where he says something interesting, that perhaps an alternative form of nationalism. He provides an answer to that in the first part of the Children, where you have a character, for example, Tai. Tai is a mystical character. His name is Tai. We don't know. Perhaps Tai is Tai. Tying different strands and tying different intellectual schools, tying different civilizational attributes. And he ultimately dies on the border. In Midnight Children, he dies on the border. He's screaming that, don't do this. He's telling some military on both sides, don't do it. So he dies. It's mystical. His name is unknown and his ancestry is unknown, and he speaks almost like that character in the Passage to India, that what is his name? That Panjab character in that he's almost like word bowling, where the English characters are trying to understand him, but they can't fathom what he is saying. He is so deep. So same is the situation with Tai also in Midnight Children. And Patrick Colum Hoggle, one conclusive comment that he makes is that everyday border crossing characterizes life on ground in Kashmir. Because the first part is about Adam Aziz. In fact, Adam, the character, and his fall taking place, Adamic fall in Kashmir, where he loses faith. A typical example of that from non-literary tradition is Herat. Navratri is going on, I think it was a couple of days. It is called Navratri here, but in Kashmir it is called a Herat. Kashmiri Pandits call it Herat. Now Herat is a festival where you get a typical example of this border crossing, and borders almost disappear. Because walnuts are an important component of that festival. Now my maternal aunt tells me that they have a walnut tree in the courtyard. The walnuts, a lot of the walnuts of that tree are reserved for a Pandit family. So there is a Pandit woman in the neighborhood. She had told him that when walnut harvest is reserved these walnuts for Herat, for Navratri, because they keep it overnight and then walnuts next. Because those walnuts are of good quality of that particular tree, which my maternal aunt was talking about. that these are for that name or that Pandit. So where this everyday border crossing takes place, or for example a rice field, your field is next to another field, so evening tea time comes, you are short of bread, so you ask the other person from the other community, do you have something? And just for your information, if there are some common things that are totally common, for example, you find salt tea early morning in every Kashmiri household, whether it is Sikh, whether it is Hindu or it is Muslim. Salted tea, when people tell me what is common among Kashmiris, I say one is of course Kashmiri language, then salted tea is also there, so which you find early morning everywhere. Pink salt tea, and that you find, that is the kind of everyday border crossing that you cross. Now all of this then English tradition, there are residues of that. If you look at Aga Shai, there is Lennox Hill, that poem, where he brings elements, although it's a very haunting poem about the death of his mother due to cancer in a Amherst, Massachusetts hospital. But here he brings Buddhist and Hindu. He says how his mother used to crown him like a Krishna in childhood at her home in Srinagar. So that is present. So these are non-literary, non-Kashmiri, so Lennox Hill, English language poem, but this fusion element is featured in oral tradition because, as I told you, because of the older, this mixing up, the convergence, Kashmir as a convergence point of these different civilizational strands, whether it is, in fact, Christianity, there is a story that Jesus Christ, for example, Pahalgam, some of you have been there. The popular folklore is that Pahalgam is, Pahal means in Kashmiri shepherd's village. So there is a story, how far it is correct, that Jesus Christ, when he was about to be crucified, then he came to Kashmir and via Pahalgam, because next to Pahalgam is another place called Ashmukam, Isa Mukam, that the stationing place of Christ. So there are these stories. So that brings the Christian element also into this mixing up, this hybrid space that has been perhaps created. Next, please. Now some examples of this mixing up in oral tradition. Habibullah Nausheri is a 16th century poet. Amide surmate sanyasi suri dil timyon udasi nyo jatichas gamte hati shahmaro dakshu shoban chandra mataro akchis poshki the amrit khasi suri dil timyon udasi. That ash smeared acetic there, he stole my despondent heart. The Ganga in his locks, cobra in his neck, brow decked with the crescent moon and star. In his hands are held bowls of flower and nectar. Now, a Muslim poet here mixing up images. And the interesting part is that being in metrical, they are also put to music. So that way, they are on radio, available on radio, they are available on, available at gatherings where people listen to musical form of these lines without mind. Now, another thing that Judeo-Hebraic tradition, including Islam, is sometimes seen, although it's a very big generalization, but there is a touch of truth also, humorless. But at the popular level, there is a lot of humor and satire and sarcasm at these iconic figures, the iconography of these religions. But somehow, as you go up, that is muffled, that is totally taken out, and you come into this really serious form where you feel there is not even a thin way of popular level. You find this sarcasm, you find this wit, you find humor, and you find sometimes criticism, which somehow disappears as you go up. So jokes about figures, authority figures in the tradition. Now, you will not find perhaps a discussion about this, because this may sound going against, but that is how these popular poets. And by the way, have you noticed that most of these Sufi poets have short names, unlike the kings, which had very long names. So you have like Farid, or you have in Kashmir you have, and they did not mind attributing the skill with which they were associated in practical life. So there is one Sufi poet called Wahab Khar. Khar means the blacksmith. So he was proud of associating very short names. So, or you have Swach Kral. Swach is the name, Kral is the potter. Mahmood Gandhi, Mahmood the villager. So they were very proud and very not hiding what they are doing in practical life. Unlike, say, Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar. So, or you can say longish, even Aurangzeb was longish, or even those when they were addressed. That is perhaps the reason they often refuse to meet. We have a story about, I think, in Delhi, Sufi point, he saw many kings, but he never met any one of them. That is also true of some of these, that there many kingships came on top, but they refused to go anywhere else. So, indicative of that is the short names of most Sufi poets, very short, and the longish names as you go higher, and the honorary titles that are associated with that which they happily discarded easily. Next, please. There is Ahmad Patwari, Yindrazun Darbar Khanpur Kalan Paristano, Soaz Mansoor Gazan, Kam Mejiso Award. The fairyland resonates with the song and dance in the court of Indra. The mesmerizing poetry of Mansoor resounds all around. As I listen entranced, my ecstasy knew no bounds. So Indra then blended with Mansoor. So you can see that fusion element taking place. By the way, if Mansoor said Anar Haq, in Kashmiri Sufi poetry it is Suhamsu. Anar Haq, that I am God, and Suhamsu, I am that. It is almost equivalent. Though he was perhaps that masquerading just to kind of hide a little bit that directed reference, just like Anal Haq by Mansoor, he was very directly saying, I am God. While as the story about Mansoor proves that when he was beheaded by the king, as the head was rolling down, the head was also saying Anal Haq. Whether it is true, but again mocking that authority. So fusion, amalgamation, hybridity as an element, characteristic of the oral poetic tradition. Next, please. Ahmad Zargar, I think with which I perhaps conclude. Harmok yes mok hai del aram. Kar tasnish donch kufro islam. From divinity, again my translation, quite metrical. From divinity bestows this vision, how can kufr and Islam be separate from? So, harmok. And to shakar dot to Muslim saf dot to shakar alayum na'ayt. So translation is given there. So I think now the final slide, the conclusion is very brief, couple of lines. Aggregation. Aggregation is this formulaic character of oral tradition. Agonism and fusion of hallmarks of Kashmiri oral poetic tradition. They underscore the symbiosis of different cultural and religious traditions and the subliminal desire to live together. So with that I conclude, and I thank you for hearing me for this.
कश्मीरी भाषा के इतने रूहानी साहित्य है, वह उसकी संस्कृति से हमें रूबरू करवाने के लिए। नाउ हाउस इज ओपन फॉर डिस्कशन। प्रोफेसर इकबाल भट्ट जी के इस वक्तव्य से संबंधित प्रश्न पूछने के लिए आप सब आमंत्रित हैं।
आमंत्रण स्वीकार कीजिए और प्रश्न पूछिएगा।
I have one issue which I think that because I was going through your first part of the presentation where we are discussing about the formulae. Myself is Matthews Joseph. I am a teacher here in this university and I am from the Department of World Languages. I teach German. So, the first part of the formulae, we are speaking about this 3-section formulae. So I have seen that one of the translations for that Mundi Rishi's dialogue with his mother. So in that last line of it, the deep interior has become pure. So one of the questions is not necessarily about your this talk, but what is the reasons behind the selection of this deep interior? It could be the inner being, because so this is one observation. Then another one I will also ask. The second part, when you speak about the contests, the way you are using contests of ideas, contests of conflicts. So I was listening to you and I was feeling that it was something like the Kshir Sagar Mandan. It was not necessarily there was a contest between Asuras and Devas. They were trying to find out the Amrit of it. So it was, for me, it was more like a Mandan was happening. I don't know what is the word. I was discussing with madams also what is the exact English word where we can put this idea. So, and again, one more point also I would like to add is regarding your final statements that Abrahamic traditions and the Sanatana traditions, where Abrahamic traditions of religions, they cannot accept fully that Aham Brahmasmi and Tattvamasi, because the difference between the creature and the creator and the creature has to be even there, even till the last moments. So that therefore even the complete dissolution of the ego will not be fully accepted till the last moment. But in Sanatana Dharma and other Indian traditions, there will become Samadhi, where you become a part of completely the Brahman, or the Brahman becomes part of you, is totally acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews, for your question. So first, I will come to the last one, the creator versus the created versus the creator. You see, these scriptures have also been vastly interpreted, and different people, if you look at this mystical Sufi thought in Islam also, even they quote lines from the same scriptures and then arrive at these conclusions. And they also believe that this authority interpretations of priestly class, discard them. We don't need to. There should be a direct access. We are the master, support also. So, your statement that finally there has to be your one interpretation may be correct to some extent, but as far as my small reading goes, that people disagree on so many things. If you look at today, YouTube is available, you look at scholars from different schools, they give radically different interpretations. Sometimes I personally feel liberated by some interpretations. I feel that here is some liberatory theology that has come forward from my civilizational stream. But you go to another person, then suddenly, as they say that until 40 you are only researching. Life begins at 40. So perhaps I am at that stage where I am trying to perhaps find something, but this is one way. Then you refer to this word interior, whether that is the correct translation, and your position was that your inner being, perhaps maybe the right word. But yes and no maybe, because being, then there are these associations of being, as you know, philosophers have written books on this being, becoming, etc. So it takes us into different directions. But ultimately, translation is not a viable substitute for the original. You have to see what the person is saying there. And ultimately, it is all a matter of feeling. What is the actual, as yesterday Sonal Monks, she was saying that, it is the rasa there. That what you deduce from your inside from it. All words are then off. It is the feeling. What kind of feeling, as Sir was also saying in that Wordsworth poem, unless you feel transformed by the feeling. Summaries, characters, plots, themes, they are for examination. But your real examination is whether you feel some transformative experience when you are reading a piece of literature, or whether it is that poem that you just mentioned. Then referring to contest, yes, you are right. So it may be a contest where the ontological point, the objective of contest is to reach at some ontological point. So taking context to a deeper level. So level is a contest. So one contest is the contest about where we are headed, where is the final goal, or is the contest about dislodging priestly authority? Is the contest about that? So we have to look at the contest, and ultimately the readers, they are free to judge and analyze what kind of contest is going on and what kind of context is useful for me in this. But absolutely right, this is not the physical contest, although in Western literature we have tragedies where contest is taken to a higher level. But there is at the end of Macbeth, you have a stage littered with dead bodies. So that takes contest to a higher level. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Anuradha. I teach at a degree college in Rewari, Haryana. Thank you, sir, for taking us to the journey from orality to textuality. Just a little curiosity, when you talked about the oral residues, which can be found in the textuality, could you please give us some more examples of that, so that we may be able to understand it in better?
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Shakespeare's, this comes from Bible, and then Bible drew it from the prefabricated earlier sources. So all these quotable, most catchy quotable lines from Shakespeare are from Bible. So our proverbs in your own language, they date back to old times. They are not, samandar ko pujane ban kar. So it sums up so many things. So these are those formulas, and then people would superimpose something on them. Okay, what was the need of that? So over which textual, our literate one. But these proverbs carrying that wit and authority, they come from the older times. So you have elements in every mother language here. You sit with your grandmother, you will hear after every fourth sentence she says something which you want to understand what she said, but she has said something bigger, which has perhaps percolated from that older history. I hope that answers, or did you understand what I am saying? Oral residues meaning there is a residue at the, so you have a cup of tea, at the bottom something remains, which remains of the tea that is right now. You fill it with another water, but there will be a residue at the bottom of the tea we just had.
Yeah, I understand that. So actually, I just wanted some concrete example for my understanding. It's actually not a question, just I wanted to know. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, the way I could put it, I get it. Sir can, or someone else can.
First of all, I must express my appreciation for Iqbal, Javeid's very wonderful, very clear lucid presentation and very well structured presentation. Very well structured presentation. And I think we have had a concrete example examples from poetry and from poetry which has been sourced in the rich, complex intellectual traditions which is the heritage of Kashmir. When he mentioned then he mentioned Kanishka's council. This amalgam, true syncretism kind of thought. And then interestingly, it is quite a revelation. Some of the things that he said were quite lovely, quite a revelation. The same poets being read, studied, admired by different sections of the society, and they're reading into those poems, different kind of associations, and also adaptation. There is a great adaptability in because of its rich amalgamation. There is a great ability to adapt, things, a readiness to adapt. That is, in fact, this amalgam, the rich complexity, has reduced the dogmatism of thought. And I am also very glad that you addressed this question of oral literature and called it an oxymoron. Very correct. It should have occurred to us, but it did. It's a good one. And your argument about orality as a kind of sedimentation in the entire literary world. Because the traditions that persist, that survive, and the ideas that survive, the poets who are revered, who were great poets, who were revered, and then how their traces, their traces continue to be present. And therefore you can read orality into what may be today's literary text. It's a literary text, but then there is a substantial orality in the form of traces and all that. I think I'm only summarizing what he has said. I'm not saying anything new. I'm putting, rewording what he has said, just to express my appreciation for Javeid's very clear mind. Thank you very much.
Javeid, it was wonderful listening to your marathon presentation, very comprehensive and you suggested about the terminology that it can be called oral text, and I concur, because going by the reader's the interpretation of text as anything that lends to communicating something, that is text, whether it is a building or it's an artifact, it is any other thing. And I think that was the base of it, but then now that this definition is sought to expand, oral text probably would be quite in order. That's my thinking.
I agree with that, because if you look at some concrete weaving examples, in Kashmir we have that old traditional mat, which was called a patij. In fact, there is a saying in Kashmiri, it's a jigo patji. Saji means 40, and Paji means by 40 you are mad. So Papaji was woven. So in winters people would weave those mats because winter was the lean season where people had no job. Either they went to different parts of India or they sat back or wove those, and then they either sold them or they used them at home. So what you do, the warp and woof, the weaving exercise, where you make new designs. The material is already available. It is again that formula. The material is there. You are only weaving it in now different designs. So you are creating a new design, like a pashmina shawl. So it has so many unique designs. So material is same, but you are now reordering whether you use T.S. Eliot or you use Walter Jackson's theorization on this. You are only creating a new design. It is more appealing, more aesthetic, and more useful in practical life also. So text, I think, would be more appropriate because literature, letters of the alphabet. So it takes us. It is like saying, if a cow had become extinct, and someone describes cow in today's world, we say maybe an automobile with legs. So there are different associations of. We will not conceive of cow if we use contemporary vocabulary, because each word that we use, it takes us into associations of our old synchronic this world, right? So there's a horizontal and a vertical dimension to it. The horizontal dimension of this word literature, it takes us to a world of letters. But text has the chance and opportunity, if you explain properly what it at its root means, to take us into that vertical domain, to the diachronic world, explaining it better. It is a leap of faith to actually try to understand oral tradition, because it is taking yourself out, you're getting rid of your location for temporal location for some time, and going back into that world. Where you imagine, for example, we are talking and there is no page, no screen, no letters. How will we talk? Will it be saying, first of all, the challenge is how we imagine ourselves talking when we are oral universal.
I think oral in a literary tradition. We have a literary tradition. In Hindi, in Kashmiri, and at the same time, there is in that tradition, the text, the oral features of the text are let's say X, they are X. But in the same language, the folk compositions, which are not written down. For example, Ramayana, Mahabharata, or these poetries that we have seen, Nandreshi, they are written down also. But then folk compositions that are not written down, and which are in fact living texts, in the sense that they are being sung and narrated, maybe in the village festivals, or the bards, who move around from one place to the other. So those oral texts have different parameters, different qualities. See, for example, there in the northeast, before the northeastern Khasi, Jaintia, and other languages got written down, they started writing it down, their compositions were purely oral. And the themes were mostly common to India. See, the marriage, death, but then professions. Hunting, for example, in the northeast, hunting. And those compositions, they were anonymous, and they were open-ended. Every retelling changed the text. Either expanded it or something. And there were also, for example, texts which were meant for restricted audience. For example, in Punjab also, at the time of marriages, there were certain songs which only the girls sang and only the girls were allowed to be listened to. Men were not allowed to be there. And in the same way in the Northeast also, there were compositions which were made by women and they were meant for women. So, you can make two distinctions. One, the orality in a literary tradition. Then orality of the folk compositions. Folk compositions of languages which have a script and of languages which do not have a script. So I think these three kinds of texts that we have will be a kind of study which will bring out the different preferences and values. And there are so many, there are 12 features. In fact, in one of these, the lady Caroline Malak of Garo, she has a whole book on the folk oral poetry. So you get different. So that to me that maybe this discussion can be extended to include these things also, and then to understand the properties of each of these kinds.
Sir, I just want to add one more thing. I was listening to Dr. Batra. I was thinking the word you started to explain the literature and connecting that to the letter. But if you think in the Indian traditions, the words nowadays we are using Sahit. So it is more about, it is more to the society. So then that issue of the letter will be once again can be contested.
Yesterday, Rajnish sir was talking about psyche. That is the different empathetic thing. I am talking about association. So if I say, the word mic, immediately associated with mic, electricity, wires, etc., they come to mind. So there is a set of associations and immediate associations and distant associations that immediately come to mind when you use a particular word. So I won't go to Derrida. He has also said something about it, but I think that should.
धन्यवाद सर। अब मैं इस सत्र की अध्यक्षा प्रोफेसर इप्शिता चंद्रा जी से अनुरोध करूंगी कि वे प्रोफेसर इकबाल भट्ट के उत्कृष्ट व वैचारिक वक्तव्य पर अपनी ऑब्जर्वेशन हम सबके साथ साझा करें।
ये तो आप डाल ही दिए समन्वय गुजर में आपने कह ही दिया है, तो मैं क्या ही कहूँ नया. But I will, as usual, just end with a question, because all the issues that Iqbal ji has considered are things that I would also like to talk about at some length, including what sir has said regarding the residues of orality in literature. Sir may have forgotten, but I have not, that he used the word scriptal in contrast to oral long ago. And I have been using it ever since, instead of calling things oral in literature. So there is that one additional element to that. But that when we are talking about scriptal construction, we may not be talking about literature. So that, leaves us free of this business of litera is a word, etc. I mean, it refers to letters and writing. But keeping that aside, actually, the question that I want to ask, what sir has suggested that, these three different kinds of orality or use of language in through, the voice, if one could just say that, not through letters, not through another technology that intervenes between me and language and the addressee. So when we are thinking of this, and when we bring these three different possibilities that sir has suggested together, that is folk constructions which are oral and have never been written down, those which were oral and were written down, and those which were oral but have become, as Iqbalji said, formulae in written texts. I think one thing which we should not be looking for is some vague idea which is impossible to grasp of purity. And in this, I think, what we need to look at, which sir has suggested, are the relations between these different kinds of orality. So, right from yesterday, we have been trying to think in terms of what are the categories that we are going to use as students and readers of literature and teachers of literature. What are the categories that we are going to use to understand the world of letters that we have, whether those letters are heard or written or sung or spoken. And I think when we are looking at categories, then the idea of purity and as opposed to it hybridity has to be discarded, and we have to think of something else. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद मैम, इतनी गहन व विस्तृत ऑब्जर्वेशन हम सबके साथ साझा करने के लिए। अब मैं कपूर सर से अनुरोध करती हूँ कि वे हमारे इस सत्र की अध्यक्षा प्रोफेसर इप्शिता जी को अंग वस्त्र देकर उन्हें सम्मानित करें। धन्यवाद सर। अब मैं सुप्रीति मोर को अगले स्तर के लिए आमंत्रित करती हूँ।
Please come. Just see your first.
now I kindly invite you to enter the session.
Reverend Professor Kapil Kapoor Sahab, Department of English and Foreign Languages, Bhim Singh University, Madam Ipshita ji, and other enlightened scholars, dignitaries, audience. I really feel very happy to be part of this grand event, whose aim is to restore and to recognize the importance of our intellectual legacy. I am especially indebted to Professor Kapil Kapoor Sahab for orienting me, though I have not been in constant touch with him, but I have heard him on YouTube, I have heard his lectures online, I have read some of his writings, and because of that I am here. Somewhere I was reading, he does not know anything who does not know his own tradition. And I think that is the idea that has motivated me to revisit, not only revisit, to go to our intellectual traditions, our knowledge systems. And once I started reading, though I am a beginner with the word of apology, I have not read much in this particular field, but I am into it. I found that it is far richer, far more ennobling than what we have been taught. Of course, the teachers who taught us were great teachers, and there was no fault of theirs if they did not orient us towards Indian aesthetics, towards our own Indian literary theories, our own literature, because that was not part of that fashion in those days. I did my MA English from Kurukshetra University in 1990s, early 90s. So at that time, American literature was in fashion, sir. At that time, Commonwealth literature was in vogue. And at that time, there was no talk about Indian aesthetics, Indian literature, or going and recognizing our own intellectual traditions. So for everything there is a time, sir. So it is the high time, and I think we must salute Professor Kapoor and his team and people like him, those who are working very hard to orient all of us, all the students in various disciplines, to get back to our own literary traditions, to our own knowledge systems. So with this, I thank the Department of English, Professor Ravi Bhushan, and other enlightened colleagues in the department for organizing this event and for inviting me and for making me the part of this event. Thank you all. And now I would request the moderator to announce the name of those who are going to present the papers.
The first presenter is Meenakshi Goyal, who is an assistant professor of English at Amrit College, Dubai. Second presenter is Neha Nair, who is currently teaching in Vash Arya Kanya Mahavidyalaya.
I want to analyze and trying to analyze and exhibit that has around the picture of the Indian
to be indulged. Culture change, it is a literature and therefore a matter of aesthetic experience and imagination, and as such it has modern writers have made a deft integration of myths into dramatic fabric of their works. They have emphasized on efficacy of integrating mythology. James Joyce and Ulysses, T.S. Eliot in The Wasteland deliberately woven their contemporary material on the mythic parallel. Writers like Thomas Mann, Kafka, James Joyce, Yeats, Eliot are some of the major writers who have deployed mythical modes or archetypal modes of expressions in an absurd, not quite or destiny. All values has become the author of. The mythical mode of narration consists in manipulating a continuous parallel between contemporaneity and antiquity. The ancient myths and legends are used by writers to highlight the mythic mode of narration as well as thematic dispensation of it. Especially in the Indian English novelists have nourished their moorings on their own Indian past. They have dovetailed their mythic experience with the experience of the immediate present. The ancient culture of Indian has provided the mythic backdrop to their literary explorations and discoveries. They have harked back to the mythology of their own culture to carve out significant pattern of fiction. But one striking feature of these writers is that they have hardly or seldom drawn their material from Greco-Roman or Judeo-Christian mythical framework. On the other hand, these Indian English writers often and with ease draw on their Indian myths because, as Soma Mukherjee opines, the Indian people are still closer to their mythology than the modern Irish or British people are to Celtic folklore or Greek legends. The people in India still listen to the Ramayana and other recitals with zeal and eagerness. The Indian psyche is molded and transformed by our mythological and legendary tales. It is conditioned by the stories from Panchatantra, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. As Pandit Nehru has aptly observed, I do not know of any books anywhere which have exercised such as a continuous and pervasive influence on the mass mind as these two, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. They are still having force in the life of Indian people. Raja Rao makes a digressional use of myth meanders through the fabric of his fictional canvas. In the foreword to Kantapura, he observes episode follows episode, and when thoughts stop, our breath stops, and we move on to another thought. This was and still is ordinary style of our storytelling. I have tried to follow it myself in this story. Raja Rao employs three types of myths in his novels: Puranic novels, Puranic myths, localized myths, and rites and rituals. The Puranic myths pertain to the binary opposition of good and the evil symbolized through the characters of Rama and Ravana. The Ravana myth appears to be the central thematic motive in Kantapura. The novel is a fictional rendering of a localized myth. It is legendary history of a remote hamlet in the western coast of India. In order to create the mythic atmosphere in the novel, Raja Rao has resorted to the depiction of rites and rituals of worship and sacrifice. Legendary history or a village, what Rao calls the Sthal Purana. The rites and rituals observes Meenakshi Mukherjee do not form part of myth but provide a frame of reference. For instance, the offering of coconut and betel nut at the altar of deity are frequently found in Rao's Kantapura. Through the telescoping of the past through myths and legends and relating it to modern context, the contemporaneity, Raja Rao has presented a viable picture of Indian reality. he has mythologized contemporary reality. In Kantapura, we have use of myths which are inexplicably and intimately connected with the religious beliefs and practices of the people and are communicated through various symbols. A novel of political resurgence, Kantapura is strewn with many myths which have been deftly woven into the fictional canvas of the story. The Puranic myths have been depicted in dramatized selfless action as expounded in Bhagavad Gita. Murti becomes the symbol of selfless action, the symbol of Mahatma. It is again contemporary Indian reality. The freedom struggle in a tiny hamlet that becomes the cynosure of the action. Taking recourse to various myths, Raja Rao conveys vividly and most lucidly the whole ethos of Indian villages. In the foreword to the Kantapura, Rao stresses the topical significance of the myth. There is no village in India, however mean, that has not a rich Sthal Purana or a legendary history of its own. Some god or god-like hero has passed by the village. Rama might have rested under this peepal tree. Sita might have dried her clothes after her bath on this yellow stone, or Mahatma himself, on one of his many pilgrimages throughout the country, might have slept in this hut. The village deity Kenchamma has a mythical semblance of the Puranic tales. Her divine presence smacks of the deities in the ancient legends and myths presiding over the fate of the human beings. The Kantapurians are ardent devotees of Kenchamma. They chant asanas to her, which reminds one of Durga's beauty. Kenchamma, Kenchamma goddess, benign and bounteous, mother of earth, blood of life, harvest, queen, rain, crowned Kenchamma, Kenchamma goddess. The story of Kenchamma goddess settling in Kantapura, says Rajesh Kalan, finds a mythical parallel in the Ganga Purana. Like goddess Ganga, Kenchamma comes down from the heaven to rescue the Kantapurians from the draconian rule of white men, the Firangis. Kenchamma is our goddess. Great and bounteous is she. She kills the demon, ages ago. In this way, she is Kenchamma is like Ganga of our ordinary people. The fight of Kenchamma with the demon brings to our mind the tale of goddess Durga killing the brute Mahisasura as depicted in Devi Purana. Look at what Acharka says about goddess Kenchamma. And she wages such a battle and she fought so many nights that the blood soaked into the earth, and that is why Kenchamma hill is all red. Kantapurians resigns all their problems to the will of goddess Kenchamma, so much so that they invoke her grace and benedictions to destroy the English in India. Hence, we find Raja Rao resorted to the localized myth of Kenchamma to elucidate the conflict between the good and the evil. Kenchamma is omnipresent in Kantapura to direct, control and preside over the life of the villagers. Several myths have been associated with the river Himavati, the daughter of Kenchamma, like the mother Ganga. Himavati sustains us, protects us. Several myths have been woven around this river. People say the goddess of river plays through the Nile. It is to Kantapurians what Ganga Mata is to all Indians. A reality as well as a fiction. A myth as well as a fact. The legend runs that the river Himavati, while in high speed, stood silently to allow the last rites of pious Ramakrishnaya to be performed, and after the last rites were over, it carried away in fury all that remained of the holy Ramakrishnaya in the form of ash and bomb. Raja Rao creates the Sthal Purana in projecting the dedicated and selfless deeds of the local Mahatma, that is Murti. The impact of Gandhi, observes C.D. Narasimha, was that of a traditional religion. Murthy is the Gandhi incarnate, or you may say mini Gandhi, who instills the fire of revolution among the Khanpurians. Like Godot in Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot, Gandhiji does not appear as a person, but his spiritual presence is pervasive throughout the novel. Murthy, the village Gandhi, is also all-pervasive in Khanpura, and his character has been mythicized. Like the Mahatma, Murthy leads the Khanpurians, the little soldier saints of the village known as Satyagrahis, who follow selfless action, that is Nishkam Karma, as enunciated in the Bhagavad Gita. The galvanization of the dormant and slumbering hamlet into the action hit to Narasimha Rao, the metaphysic of selfless action, Nishkam Karma, expressed through Satyagraha. Murthy's character is idealized in the novel to the extent of being regarded as a local Mahatma, because a myth necessarily deals with an idealized man or a man larger than life. To elucidate and explicate the theme of redemptive suffering in human society, Raja Rao takes the myth of suffering more directly self-imposed to absorb the evil of others. Like the chief characters in myths, which are mythicized by exalting and elevating them above the common rung of humanity, Murthy too is presented as an exalted and dignified character. In mythicizing the protagonist, Raja Rao adheres to the classical tradition. Murthy is not mythicized but also idealized. Mulkraj Anand does not idealize the character of Bhatha or Gandhi in Untouchable and even in Gauri. In spite of parallel resemblance between Gauri and Sita in regard to theme of passive suffering, Gauri's character is not mythicized in such an ideal manner. Mulkraj Anand uses myth for illuminating and exposing the character like Gauri, for elucidating and projecting the contemporary predicament of women. On the other hand, Raja Rao almost substitutes the mythical characters with the contemporary ones in Khanpura in such a dexterous manner that one can hardly discern the difference between the myth and the reality in the novel. The blending of myth and reality is almost perfect and meticulous in execution. The Ram Ravana myth has its associations with the good and the evil forces used in the novel in order to portray the struggle for independence from British rule. The freedom movement is equated with Mahabharata Yuddha. There is divine powers of Lord Krishna that regulate the war, and here the invisible and redemptive presence of Mahatma that controls the actions of Khanpurians. The illiterate narrator Achaka mingles the fact of circular thoughts of Mahatma in the contemporary situations with the legends and the myths as embedded in Ramayana and Mahabharata. The legendary heroes are inextricably linked up with the historical person. Mahatma Gandhi is thus described as the incarnation of Rama and Krishna, born to liberate Mother India from the draconian rule of the demons, Ravana and Kamsa. The Harikatha man Jayaram Char mythical narrates the birth of Mahatma Gandhi on the request of sage Valmiki to Lord Brahma. Thus, Raja Rao harnessed the Puranic style to describe the birth of Mahatma, who was sent to this world by Brahma for destroying evil and restoring good. To attend the Round Table Conference in 1931, it is described in terms of Indian mythical tradition. It is like Rama's visit to Lanka to save Sita from the hands of Ravana. Sita is our Swaraj and Ravana the British rule. The ever-present Indian mythos at length absorbs the characters and history. It has all been bathing and overwhelming. Gandhi has further been compared with Lord Shiva. The Khanpurians invoke the grace of Brahma, the creator, by apprising him of the tyrannous rule of Britishers. They beseech Brahma to send them one of his gods so that he may incarnate on earth and retrieve India from the demonic grip of British rulers. Through the characters of Swami, another Asura, Raja Rao has sarcastically portrayed the Indian natives joining hands with the British to betray Gandhi's fight against the Goras for attaining freedom. The agents for this Swami act as agent provocateurs to subvert the Ram Ravana myth and exercise their diabolic designs to dissuade the villagers from joining Murthy's non-cooperation movement. Ironically and almost pathetically, the Swami's agent compares the British government with Rama and Mahatma Gandhi with Ravana. Besides this, the prose descriptions of nature's surroundings and happenings are also reminiscent of the Purans. Kenchamma lies curled up like a child on its mother's lap. The dead body of Ramakrishnaya washed and tied to the bamboo, and behind the jackfruits, the sun rose like a camphor. And when the waters were still gurgling in the gutters, the procession hurried on. This description of Ramakrisnaya's death is reminiscent of the account of nature's response to the death of Karna in the Mahabharata. The performance of various rituals lands a mythical frame of allusion to the novel. The Kanthapurians offered goddess Kenchamma sari and gold drinklet to ward off and malefic influences. During the plowing time, the villagers wait for the Rohini star to yoke their bulls to the plow. Plowing is considered to be fruitful only if the omen of the eagle, the vehicle of goddess Kenchamma, shows itself. The villagers light bonfires and sing and dance in Kenchamma's home. When Murthy is in prison, the Kanthapurians sing bhajans with cymbals, conch and camphors, clapping hands and blowing drums and perfume of the sandal-based flowers of in the hairs. And these are the most highly suitable symbols used by Raja Rao in Kanthapur. The congregational worship rituals for appeasing Kenchamma is another instance of mythical fashion and style. Ratna offers 10 coconuts and a Hindu worship to Kenchamma for the recovery of Murthy. In this way, thus there is a perceptible mythical pattern in Kanthapura. The use of Indian myths like the Ramayana lend a fairy tale charm, a romantic aura to the novel and stimulate our imagination. These myths transport us to the remote times in the past when gods and demigods and superhuman beings played a vital role in our lives. To the days when myths regulated our emotional and intellectual actions, as literature says, writers are attracted to myths primarily because it is literature itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sneha Nain, for your wonderful exposition of the use of myths in Raja Rao's seminal work. I think we can invite lecture after the presentation of the second paper. So now we invite Dr. G for his presentation, and he himself will announce the topic of his presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Chair and the scholars present here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present my views on the subject of performative encounters and or in textual structure of the Bhagavad Gita. In the inaugural session of the conference yesterday, respected Professor Kapil Kapoor has made it very much clear the concept of orality related to the Indian tradition. And I agree. I'm in all agreement to whatever he has said. And the kind of difference or the distinction he has made between the Western and Indian tradition, scriptal and oral tradition, and why Indian tradition is oral, to the roots of the Indian linguistic philosophy, where language is conceptualized as sound, not word. So therefore, whatever is constituted and constructed into a mode, which is basically, essentially is oral, a sound. So therefore, the mode of the textuality has to be oral. It has to be oral. Because the basic idea of language essentiates the mode of textuality in Indian tradition, that is oral. But in my talk, I would like to bring into light another aspects of this mode of textuality, because of course we do agree. In most of the contemporary discourses on literature and intellectual or theoretical discourses, it has been mentioned, and most of the scholars agree to this, that we have oral tradition. Of course, we have, but that oral tradition, of course, actually has made another aspect very relevant and pertinent to the mode of textuality. That is, to me, I think, that most of the texts are constructed or composed into mythical mode, because orality itself necessitates it that because an oral text cannot be naturally and primarily cannot be discursive. It has to be mythical. And two examples which I want to mention here. One is the first text of poetics in Indian tradition, that is Nati Shastra. It starts in a mythical mode. The very first chapter of Nati Shastra, that is Natutpati Adhyay, where a story or a myth has been constructed to expose or to the exposition of the idea of Natya. And another very important text, that is Sangrah Granth, that is 9th century AD text, Kavya Mimamsa by Rashi, where literature has been conceptualized in the form of a human form, Kavya Purushotpati Adhyay, where the philosophical construct has been conceptualized or perceived in a complete human form. So therefore, all oral texts to me are necessarily become mythical, and something which is mythical and orally constructed has to be performative, sensual. performance, basically, if we go by the distinction that Aristotle has made in his Poetics, in the three modes of poetry, like lyrical, dramatic, and narrative. But to me, it's not a valid distinction as far as Indian literary philosophy is concerned. We don't have that distinction because the texts which are composed orally, so we have two types of, only two modes of expression, possible modes of expression, oral or visual. Oral or visual texts are possible. So, and another, we don't have this trajectory from narrative or this opposite or this dichotomy doesn't exist in Indian academia or thinking. Narrative and performative. No, performativity is has become the central point of any text that has been composed in oral mode. So therefore, I have brought this subject to talk about the aspect of performativity, and with the example of the Bhagavad Gita, of course, one of the most seminal texts of Indian tradition, and there are other texts are also, and I'm not going to talk about each and every concept that has been there in Bhagavad Gita. I would take a few concepts that basically, the fundamental concepts that are discussed, and that basically talks about the performative element, basically performative element that that is basically the defining element, that we can say the defining element of textuality in Indian tradition. So that's why I have written this paper, Performative Encounters and or in Textual Structure of the Gita. So the textuality in Indian tradition has been defined or consists of these three aspects. Orality, of course. Orality is the defining element. Since the Indian linguistic philosophy, where Wangmay, it is called verbal discourse, is called Wangmay, and it has been discussed in the first chapter to understand or construct the text of textuality. So that's why these three aspects are the defining elements of textuality in Indian tradition. So next. So for me, I'm not going to define what is theatre, but this is a fair understanding. This is how I take theatre in a form of discussions. I'm not talking about the theory, the theoretical aspect of theatre that has been discussed in Nati Shastra or other texts also. So it's an encounter for me. It's an encounter. As a methodological approach, theatre facilitates encounters with life as a means of revisiting life and opening up new potentials for our lives and for the lives other than our own. It is a conscious return to what has been there already, a beginning again. Because this is the basic difference between the real life and theatre. Because theatre basically represents or reenact. It's a reenactment of life on stage. So that's why it's a beginning. It's a beginning again. Beginning again means whatever is already there, whatever we know about life, then it comes through it comes before us through performance afresh, anew, into new aspects with a new meaning. So that's why this is what theatre is for me. So next. So this is basically the image which I have taken from Gita Khanpur Press. Yes. So next. Yes. Next. Yeah. The performativity in this seminal text of the Indian intellectual tradition. Of course, they have Shastri text and the Kavya text. Of course, we have a lot of tradition of text, but this is for me. I have taken the example of performativity, the element of performativity that is there in the construction, in the textual construction of the text. This is how it has been translated. Not exactly translated, but this is how we put it into English. The song divine, the Bhagavad Gita, the song divine. Song is a form, it's a genre which is performative, basically performative, primarily. So therefore, the entire text of the genre in which we put the text into is called a song, which is primarily a form of performance or a performative text. A song has to be performed. So that, and of course, orally composed. So next, please. One of the first and the central concept that has been discussed in this seminal text, the Song Divine, the Bhagavad Gita, is yoga. So yoga, as it has been, of course, Maharishi Patanjali has taken this concept from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and he has composed it entire text on this Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And in the first sutra of he has defined the concept of yoga. At yoganu shasanam. He said at yoganu shasanam. Yogas chitta vritti nivadhaya. Basically, this is how he has defined it. And of course, he has Lord Krishna has also defined it in Srimad Bhagavad Gita that yoga is what is yoga? It is the even-mindedness of the doer. That means yoga is that which helps us to, which stops the consciousness to take different abilities or forms. So that is yoga. And here I can quote from the text itself even. In chapter 2, Shloka 48, Lord Krishna said, Arjun, perform your duties established in yoga, renouncing attachment and be even-minded in success and failure. Evenness of mind is called yoga. Sorry. Yeah. From the same chapter, the next shlok, number 49, where Lord Krishna said that action with a selfish motive is far inferior to this yoga in the form of equanimity. Do seek refuge in this equipoise of mind, Arjuna, for poor and rest are those who are the cause in making their actions bear fruit. And then the next, endowed with equanimity, one sheds in this life both good and evil. Therefore strive for the practice of this yoga of equanimity. Skill in action lies in the practice of this yoga. So, from the definition and the explanation of the yoga, where Lord Krishna himself defined the position of the performer, and very famously in 2009, he died in 2009. Javeid Iqbal Bhat, the famous Polish theatre director, in his book Poor Theatre, he has defined abhinaya or theatre when he said that when inner feelings and outer expression and their outer expression becomes concurrent. So that is basically the theatre or the abhinaya. So he has come very close to the concept of yoga that has been discussed or defined in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So yoga, I can say that basically conceptualizes the entire mental, spiritual and the physical makeup of the performer or the doer. So and through that if one becomes a yogi, and then that process has been discussed, of course, I will not go into the detail of that. So then yoga basically trains a person or a performer to do the action in the most or to perform the action in the most efficient or most skillful way. Next, please. Then the next concept that has been discussed is yajna. Yajna basically it's a yajna and theatre. They in Indian tradition and even in Natya Shastra, of course, Bharat calls Natya as yajna. And yajna, the concept has been, of course, that is there in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, where having created mankind along with yajna, at the beginning of creation, the Creator, Brahma, said to them, "You shall prosper by this, may this yield the enjoyments you seek." In chapter 3. And all things are evolved from food, production of food is dependent on rain, rain ensues from sacrifice, and sacrifice is rooted in prescribed action. Know that prescribed action has its origin in Vedas, and Vedas proceed from indestructible God, hence the all-pervading infinite is always present in sacrifice. So, sacrifice, of course, that is the central process of religion. And yajna is the archetypal action and the theatre. And here I would quote from Professor Byrski's book. Of course, it was his PhD thesis, and then later it was published in book form. The concept of ancient Indian theatre, where he has a separate chapter on yajna and the natya, basically, and where I quote from the same chapter, the world is yajna. Yajna makes the world. It sets the pattern for all whatever happens in it. Yajna rules the world. Natya represents such a world. So therefore, here yajna is natya. So it has indeed been given a perfect shape to fulfill this task, for it restates in the language of the technique of art the most substantial truths enshrined in the sacrifice. Such a natya is an epitome of the entire cycle of existence, never tragic, because there is no place for tragedy in the universal yajna of existence, which is conducted through its course to a fulfillment when mind and speech, or Indra and Saraswati, are yoked together for its sake. So that is another point which I want to make, that performativity and the concept of natya or theatre, that has become a part of course, it is as my title is like this, performative encounters in or and textual structure of Gita. So, sure. So, next please. Next. Another important point is the sacrifice. The sacrifice is the archetypal action to perform yoga, and then why that because sacrifice is one of the seminal concept that has been discussed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita to define, to conceptualize the action, and with proper sacrificial procedures you can attain the bliss only. So that's why it is the element of performance is there. Next please. Yeah. Then the transfiguration or the Virat Roop. Virat Roop, when Lord Krishna came into his transfigured image, so that image basically represents the multiplicity of reality. It was representative of the multiple aspects of reality existing, multiplicity of creation, and in that one image. So that basically, if you take it to the theater, where a performer or an actor can perform, can represent through his or her body and a number of meanings. He or she, the performer can create any type of meaning or sense through his or her body. So that's why that's what he here through his Virat Roop he had said that through his Virat. I would like to I think Lord, you are precisely what you declare yourself to be, but I long to see your divine form possessed of wisdom, glory, energy, strength, valor, effulgence, O Purushottam, the Supreme Being. From chapter 3rd, Shri Bhagavan said, Arjun, behold my manifold multifarious divine forms of various colors and shapes in their hundreds and thousands. Arjun, behold as concentrated within this body of mine the entire creation, consisting of both the moving and unmoving beings and whatever else you desire to see. Concentrated at one place in the person of that supreme deity, Arjun, then beheld the whole universe with its manifold divisions. So this is what has been said in Bhagavad Gita, where the performer of the Natraj or the nut is being conceptualized as the carrier of, or where the unlimited or infinite possibilities of meaning can be conveyed or communicated through the performance. It's the last point. Where in the chapter 13, these two concepts, the chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita is devoted to these two concepts, Kshetra and Kshetra Gyan. Kshetra is Sharir, and Kshetra Gyan is the spirit, the spirit. So this is I think the most important testimony that Gita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita has the element of performance in this. So I think I have taken so much time. I have not been allotted. I'm sorry, because here I would like to stop. Thank you very much.
Maybe because of the constraints of time. Otherwise, there was full freedom for all the presenters, all the resource persons to present their papers. May I now invite questions, queries and observations from the audience on these two presentations, one by Dr. Mrs. Neha and another by Dr. Z. I have one with Dr. Neha's presentation. So
I was listening to the presentation, it was just my observations. There is no criticism. Is Dr. Neha around? Okay. Anyway, but we can listen this observation. Still we can listen to the observation. The issue was that she was trying to see in one novel, specifically of, I think probably in Southern Coast, maybe it's a novel from Karnataka, Raja Ram. And that see, in that traditions, in that area we have a very strong traditions of Amman Koval traditions. Amman Koval traditions is not necessarily to be considered to be something like it is not related to the epic traditions of Mahabharata and Ramayana. This is called Kshetrapalas. These are local deities, and their symbolism, and they are the guardians of a village or a tribe or a small area. So these traditions does not come to into the epical traditions of Rama is killing Ravana, and this is not there. So therefore, I personally feel like that there was an attempt to wear a glass in yellow and look everything and see that it also looks like yellow. So that is one of the observations regarding the first one. And I have one issue here with Dr. Ajit also, because maybe I am not able to get to that intellectual discourse of the performativeness in this entire discourse here. Because in the initial stage, when I was listening to, I had a feeling that all oral text not necessarily to be mythological. For example, there are n number of tales and fables and stories and proverbs. So these are not necessarily to be mythological. It could be an expression of a shared history of that local tradition which has been composed into oral traditions. So this is one.
Questions and observations are now open to Dr. Ajit and other audience for further extension of the discussion.
I think the first point about Dr. Neha has already been discussed here in the former Sthal Puran. So, yeah, so it is very much mentioned in Kanthapura also in the practice. So Raja Ram is very explicit. So there is no doubt about it that it's not really the same Ramayana circulating everywhere. There could be local legends also. This is one.
I think this has been the standard template for maintaining the orality of the texts, for preserving the texts through such methods like Harikatha man who is telling stories about Ramayana, about the character of Ram, and then its association with the Shanti character of Kanthapura.
There is a new film from Kannada on these kinds of stories called Kandara. It is a very popular film nowadays. It specifically speaks about this kind of Kshetrapala. And it is, I don't know whether it is the Indian audience who have seen this, but I would recommend to somebody who wants to understand this concept of Koval traditions, Amman Koval traditions, Kandara.
Any other question or observation? Before that, may I request Dr. Ji? I have a question from Professor Kapil. Do you also have such performative tradition of Bhagavad Gita in Gandhari tradition or in any other tradition? We have such tradition, Bhagavad Gita recitation or Sumatra.
Actually, what exactly Bhagavad Gita is performed in traditions?
Yes, Rajnish.
The philosophical or theoretical concepts are performed through those performances. That's what I wanted to know.
Professor Deepti Singh, routine observation here. I think we need to make a distinction between myth and legend. For example, नाट्यशास्त्र में तो ब्रह्मा के पास गए, उन्होंने कहा ये legendary है। और जब गदिग्रह पुराण में जो आता है, गदिग्रह का वो myth, that is mythology. But narration like how the text came to be created, like legendary mode. थोड़ा मेरे ख्याल में कल भी बात हुई थी. Your use of this word myth, I think maybe I am not able to, but then maybe you need to explain it or something about. But not now. Think about it. Secondly, we have to make a distinction between oration in a text and orality of the text. You see, for example, the dialogue. Because Gita is a massive dialogue. It's a dialogue. And a dialogue by nature is spoken. Performative I will hesitate to use unless you perform that text as he says. There are two persons who are actually enacting Bhagavad Gita. Then it's a performance. It's a dialogue. And dialogues by nature, we feel that people are speaking, so they are speaking their language. For example, I think Anand Bhajan talks about in Sanskrit plays, the women characters using Prakrit and the other king using Sanskrit. People using different dialects or idiolects. In Dickens, for example, Dickens is very famous for very real spoken language in his dialogues. Very real spoken. Now, in texts like this, they are dialogues, but the language, in fact, is a compositional language. It is not spoken language. Compositional. It's a composition, very carefully constructed language. It's not the language of a living dialogue. And what I feel is that you are thinking of the elements in Bhagavad Gita, conceptual elements, which could be turned into enactments. But which are not enactments really. You said that there is a difference between theatre and life. But obvious in life there is no replay. In drama there is replay. The main difference, as you said rightly, is abhinay. Between the entire Rasteri, everything that is there in the Rasteri, it applies to life. People undergo and all that. The difference between life and drama is that in drama, what actually happens in life is abhinay uska hota hai, enactment hoti hai, uski enactment hai, and it is abhinay which makes the difference. Now in these texts, you have dialogues which one supposes, which presupposes, are living spoken language, but there is not. In some we can call such a text oral. We can call it dialogic, but whether we can call it oral, what do you say? What's up? Your reflections on this. When you have taken this subject, I think you got to refine this. Maybe I don't understand, and maybe you have some other things to say. Add to all these things.
Quite a few things I was not aware of, but you have told. I'm not saying, and I'm not claiming this that it is a physical text or it is a pure grammar. The point was not that. Actually, I just want to reflect upon as the subject of the conference, orality to textuality, basically. And basically, I don't take it as a trajectory from orality to textuality. Orality is a mode of textuality. That can be a mode of textuality, just like scriptal and oral text. These two are the modes of textuality. So this is one thing. And something, I agree that you have said that, and it is now discussed in all nowadays in discussions that we have an oral tradition, no doubt about it. And something which is orally composed has to be necessarily performative. The performative element is this. It has to be. Otherwise,
I agree with you. See, your Gita, in fact, is a very staged dialogue. It's not a natural. It has stage. And in fact, it is a very philosophical text which has been composed by Vyasa in the form of a dialogue. Why? Because many Indian intellectual texts are dialogic, if not multilogic. Mahabharata, for example, there are three characters, three persons who are talking. And it is much more alive dialogue in Mahabharata because there is a Madhubudhi Chhatra there. See? But as compared to this, as compared to Bhagat, it says the author used, Marcus Aurelius of meditation. He said that I wanted to write like Plato in the dialogic. I tried, but I found that I had not reached that level. What is that level? Where you see the other points of view as well as you see your own. Only then you can, engage in a multi-logic or dialogic conversation. So he chose to write in the third person mode, first person mode. As a monologue instead of a dialogue in monologue. Dialogue is chosen because in a way, if you exercise your imagination, you are actually seeing two persons discussing something. And it is not one person giving you the point of view. There are 17 questions Arjuna asks, 17. And all the questions are answered by Krishna one by one. So before you, two people are discussing. And as you proceed with it, you are persuaded to a point of view. You are told to take your own position on the points. You are not given a kind of a societal norm. This is correct. And in the 18th chapter, verse 63, what does Krishna say? Arjuna, I have told you everything. Now you decide what you want. So, unlike the Western tradition, there is no societal norm. या आपको ये करना है, आपके सामने पॉइंट्स ऑफ व्यू रखे हैं, सब बता दिया, अब you make up your mind. So that is, but it is a staged dialogue. It's not a natural. जो डिकन्स के जो डायलॉग हैं, उस तरह के डायलॉग नहीं है, वो डिकन्स की लैंग्वेज में जो, अगर उसका वो बोलता है, सर्कस वाला बोलता है तो अपनी भाषा बोलता है, अगर वो उनकी जो लुइसा की मदर बोलती है तो उसकी अपनी गो बी समथिंग वो लॉजिकल, तो वो अपनी अलग भाषा बोलती है. That is living during that. And therefore Dickens novels to a large extent are really close to orality. Very close to it. This is my submission.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insightful observations, and these have helped us in seeing the Bhagavad Gita from different perspectives. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all.
Sir, I request once again Professor Data Purohit to participate in the chair.
मैं आता हूँ. पहले आपका facilitation. नहीं उमेद सिंह जी.
Lunch is ready to be served. I request you all to proceed for lunch. The next session will be started sharp 2:45. Please be seated by the table.
We break for lunch. We break. How do we eat